Chapter 33:14. Just by looking at the primordial Chaos Emperor's appearance, it was clear that the relationship between the two sides was not very pleasant. Yi Shiwen wasn't surprised by Emperor Huanyuan's words. Although he was also stunned at the beginning, it was only at the beginning. With Yi Shiwen's current status and strength, who would dare to address him as that kid? However, Emperor Han Yuan dared to do so. It was not only because his own strength was unfathomable, but also because he had watched Yi Shiwen grow all the way until now. When Yi Shiwen was still in the myriad heavens, he was already amazing. He swept all the way and caught the attention of Emperor Han Yuan very early on. He even had the idea of training Yi Shiwen to be his representative in the myriad heavens. Who knew that Yi Shiwen was not a good person at all? Yi Shiwen actually wanted to destroy the opportunity of becoming an emperor that he had painstakingly refined, not to mention killing the candidate that he had chosen, DNI. Yi Shiwen went against the flow to achieve the way, tore apart the shackles of the myriad heavens, and finally achieved the way. Others might not know, but he was very clear about the difficulty of this, because the restriction that prevented the myriad worlds from becoming sovereigns was actually due to his actions in the open and in the dark. Originally, he wanted to curb the development of the myriad worlds, turning it into his own base camp, allowing him to do whatever he wanted. However, things could not keep up with the changes in the end. Such an action had finally provoked the heavenly axiom to retaliate, secretly cultivating its own destiny's child. First, it was the Qin Emperor who tore open a rift and became the emperor first, confronting him for many years and not falling into a disadvantageous position. Then, Yi Shiwen completely tore the so-called imprisonment into pieces. After him, a large number of emperors collectively became emperors, and the heavens ushered in an extremely prosperous golden era. Originally, it was impossible for so many experts to become emperors in such a short period of time. However, after such a long period of time, the myriad heavens and myriad realms had been holding back for too long. Too many experts were stuck at this rank. This led to a collective eruption the moment the seal was broken. He had long been prepared. How could it be that easy to suppress the heavenly way of a massive dimensional universe? He was just taking advantage of the situation. It was impossible for him to do that alone. Such a result was only a matter of time, but the speed of Yi Shiwen's growth was still completely beyond his expectations. When he was in the myriad heavens world, Yi Shiwen had already completely transcended his control. He didn't have the upper hand in several remote fights. At that time, Yi Shiwen was on the throne. He was blessed by the heavens. His luck was so exuberant that it was unstoppable. Almost anyone who stood in his way would die. Even he had to avoid the sharp edge. He suppressed the plan in his heart and waited until Yi Shiwen left the throne. Later, Yi Shiwen pacified the turmoil in all directions of the heavens and realms. Among them, the backup forces that he had arranged were also completely eradicated. It was originally difficult for him to directly intervene in the heavens and realms. Now, even his tentacles were cut off. How could he not be angry? However, he could only endure it until Yi Shiwen finally pacified the myriad heavens and realms. When he decided to go to the path of creation, the opportunity that he had been waiting for a long time finally arrived. He originally wanted to kill Yi Shiwen completely. He spent a lot of effort to condense the incarnation, which also had the cultivation of the sixth realm. It should have been easy to deal with a mere third realm Yi Shiwen. However, he actually managed to escape. When Yi Shiwen came to the path of creation again, everything seemed to have changed. He had actually grown to the ninth realm. How much time had passed? From the time he attained the Tao, it hadn't even been 100,000 years. Such a short period of time was nothing more than a nap for an invincible existence like Imperial Lord Primordius. Yet the world had already changed so much. Not only was his destiny frighteningly abundant when he was in the myriad heavens and realms, but it was also not much different when he entered the Fortune God dynasty. The speed of his cultivation seemed to be even faster and more terrifying. Many thoughts flashed through the mind of the primordial Chaos Emperor. At the same time, Yi Shiwen was also thinking about many things. His initial guess that the primordial Chaos Emperor had already advanced to the heavenly master realm seemed to be true. Now, it seemed that the primordial Chaos Emperor had really become a heavenly master. It was no wonder that so many emperors had been killed by him. Even the demon monarch had suffered a great loss in his hands. Such a person was like a monster in the darkness. He could jump out at any time and swallow you whole. Fortunately, the current him was no longer the same as he was many years ago. If it was in the past, it would have been difficult for him to escape today. At the same time, a guess was forming in his mind. He wanted to verify this guess. A disdainful sneer flashed across the corner of Yishuan's mouth, and he said, "It's naturally a piece of cake for me to step into the heavenly master realm. At that time, I naturally have a way to kill you, a greedy bastard." The conversation between the two had already confirmed the idea of deep hatred in the hearts of everyone. A great conflict must have broken out between the two sides. Judging from the situation, Yishuan had most likely suffered some losses. This also made many emperors who had suffered losses in Yishuan's hands feel very happy. Although they knew that Yishuan was their comrade now and should be considered as a comrade in the same trench, it was inevitable that such thoughts would arise in their hearts. It was really because the pressure that Yishuan had given them before was too great. Ha! You're still as arrogant as ever. You were already arrogant before you became an emperor, and it's even more so now. But if you think you're qualified to act presumptuously in front of me just because you've cultivated to the 9th level of the Imperial Monarch realm, then you're gravely mistaken. I allowed you to escape last time, but you definitely won't have such a chance this time. Emperor Primordial Chaos laughed loudly, and the killing intent on his face became more and more intense. He was determined to not let Yishuan go and give him the opportunity to grow up safely. You're just an old dog who cultivated a little earlier. Give me a few more years, and killing you will be like stepping on an ant. Yishuan said calmly, "It's a pity that you won't have this chance." Primordius, Empyrean Emperor's expression was ice-cold. His roar reverberated through the air, shaking the heavens and earth. He instantly moved. Instantly, the laws of the entire space were burning. Beneath his feet, a supreme formation rune appeared, erupting with a terrifying power. In the next moment, Emperor Primordial Chaos had already flown in front of Yishuan. He crossed his arms and stepped on Yishuan with one foot. It was very overbearing, and there was no doubt that he would be the most domineering. Unlike before, his previous incarnation was only at the 6th realm, and could not display his overbearing power to the fullest. This Bigfoot was going to stomp Yishuan to death in the air. For a moment, endless laws and boundless supernatural power came crashing down on Yishuan like an ancient mountain. How could Yishuan be willing to be captured without putting up a fight? His expression became increasingly indifferent, and his eyes directly evolved into the eye of heavenly punishment. His whole body was bursting with immortal light, and his vitality was surging, and his combat power was constantly increasing. Roar! Yishuan let out a long and loud shout. Ripples soared into the sky, and the space shattered into pieces one after another, turning into fine powder. This was the first time he had erupted with his true fighting prowess after he had dealt with the Electric Lord. It was simply beyond the realm of the Emperor, and had reached the realm of the legendary Heavenly Lord. No one could stop it, and the entire space was about to collapse under his roar. Many emperors suddenly felt their faces turn pale. Except for the Battle Emperor and a few others, no one had truly seen Yishuan's true combat power. Even from afar, they could only feel the impact of the roar's ripples, and their cheeks hurt. If this continued, it was very likely that they would be seriously injured. What kind of amazing level had his true combat power reached? It was truly terrifying. Previously, they wanted to join forces to deal with Yishuan, but now they felt that it was too ridiculous. Was he in existence on the same level? They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath at all. Many martial arts phenomena appeared behind Yishuan. These phenomena were hazy, but they were also bursting with 7 colored rays of light. Then he slapped his palm in an equally powerful manner, and fiercely collided with the big foot of Emperor Primordial Chaos. Boom! This terrifying collision shocked the world. The impact ripples seemed to have swept into the long river of time and swept away all heroes. No one could stop it. Many emperors were pushed back by this terrifying shockwave, and they couldn't even stand steadily. They opened up barriers to resist. This time, even the battle emperor revealed a shocked expression. He could naturally see that Emperor Primordial Chaos was much more terrifying than the Electric Lord, but he didn't know where this Emperor Primordial Chaos came from. With his qualifications, it could be said that there were relatively few people that even he didn't know. It was already very difficult to survive in that era until now. In the process, the world had also suffered many disasters. After the Electric Lord failed to break through to the Heavenly Lord realm, he was able to completely surpass the combat power of the Emperors. However, this Emperor Primordial Chaos was much stronger than the Electric Lord, and one could clearly feel it. But what was more terrifying was that Yi Shiwen had also become stronger. Compared to the time when he fought with the Electric Lord, he was much stronger. If Yi Shiwen were to fight with the Electric Lord now, it wouldn't take such a long time at all. Thinking of this, he only felt that his worldview was collapsing. Yi Shiwen was already strong enough back then, but he was able to go further in that realm. Is he still human? He's simply a monster. However, there is obviously more than one such monster. Emperor Primordial Chaos was also an unparalleled monster. Could it be that he had really fallen behind? Were there really so many powerful people in this world? They were still terrifying and invincible before reaching the Heavenly Lord realm. Chapter 33:15. The Battle Emperor felt that his worldview was about to collapse. In the past, he had a vague feeling that he was the best in the world. Besides the Heavenly Master, there was only him. However, he felt that he was slapped in the face one after another. First, it was Electric King, then Yi Shiwen, and now this Emperor Hun Yuan. Each was more terrifying than the last, and each was more subversive than the last. He felt a little old, and this world really didn't belong to him anymore. At this time, the collision between the two sides had just ended. Yi Shiwen stood motionless like an old tree rooted in the ground. He raised his hand to block the Emperor Hun Yuan's kick. A sneer flashed across his mouth, and he said, "Emperor Hun Yuan, do you really think that I'm still the junior that you chased after many years ago?" Emperor Hun Yuan's face showed a somewhat stunned expression. Although he thought that he had overestimated Yi Shiwen, he still underestimated Yi Shiwen's strength. If your main body is here, perhaps I will have to avoid your attack. However, it's just an avatar, and you want to kill me? Yi Shiwen said again. After the fight just now, he was 100% sure that even this Emperor Hun Yuan was just an avatar. It was just that this avatar was particularly strong. Although it had not reached the Heavenly Master realm, it was completely superior to ordinary emperors. However, not reaching the Heavenly Master realm was not the Heavenly Master realm after all. The fight was completely different. Yi Shiwen could perceive this. Yi Shiwen's words caused a stir among the emperors. After everyone was in an uproar, they felt as if they had caught the first ray of sunshine in the dark night. They originally thought that Misty Cloud and the others were invincible, terrifying, and unrivaled when they appeared in their main bodies. At the very least, they couldn't see it with their eyesight because Immortal Reverend Vast Cloud and Imperial Lord Primordial Chaos only needed to make a slight move to instantly kill a powerful Imperial Lord, a royal-level creature. Such characters were unparalleled. However, judging from Yi Shiwen's words, it seemed that these were all incarnations and not the main body. If it was the main body, then they might not be able to escape from this calamity and would become nourishment for these celestial masters. However, if it was only an incarnation, then there was still a glimmer of hope for survival. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. It's not the main body. Great, we still have a glimmer of hope. That's right, let's kill our way out. I don't believe they can kill all of us. Why should we run? We might as well go all out against them. If we kill any one of them, we might obtain a great fortune and have a chance of stepping into the Empyrean realm in the future. Immediately, many sovereign emperors started discussing. Many of them were not willing to escape just like that. Some of them even had the thought of going against the flow and attacking the celestial venerables. If a heavenly venerate was here, they naturally wouldn't dare to have such thoughts. It wasn't because it was disgraceful, but because it was purely overthinking. The gap between a heavenly venerate and an emperor-king had been proven countless times in history. It was simply impossible to cross this line. Courting death. The sneering old man stretched out his hand and conjured a mountain, smashing the loudest sovereign emperor into a mist of blood. Do you really think that I can't deal with you just because it's not me? Obediently accept your death and avoid suffering. We've taken out so many law crystals to set up such a shocking scheme. You should be satisfied to think that you could make a scheme like this. The old man cackled strangely. Many sovereign emperors finally came to their senses. So what if it was really just an incarnation? Even if it was just an incarnation, it was equally terrifying. If they joined forces, they might be able to seriously injure one of them. However, there were more than one person present. If these people joined forces, they would be able to pose a fatal threat to them. At this moment, the only thing we can do is run. Even if we join forces, we won't be able to get away. The deterrence these people gave them was simply too terrifying. At this moment, everyone finally understood that these law crystals were actually a huge trap in the first place. No wonder so many law crystals had appeared in this obviously unsuitable place to produce law crystals. It was just that everyone's eyes had been blinded by the law crystals. Even if they knew that there was a problem, they were unwilling to give up just like that. This was related to whether they could step into the Empyrean realm. No one was willing to give up just like that. Greed was the original sin. Even if they knew that they had to choose again, not many of them would be willing to give up. At most, they would obtain it as soon as possible and leave. Boom! All of a sudden, everyone fled in all directions. Hundreds of sovereign emperors hurriedly fled in all directions. Everyone hoped that the person who was caught and killed would not be them. As for Empyrean Misty Cloud and the others, they each held a terrifying magic weapon and chased after them. It was as if they were picking vegetables in a vegetable garden. They picked off these powerful sovereign emperors and emperor-level entities one by one. The entire scene was incomparably terrifying. Those who had a weak heart would have nightmares at night just looking at it. Every time a sovereign emperor was caught, they would begin to fight back fiercely in an attempt to stop these Empyrean incarnations. However, even so, they could only cause a little bit of trouble. Then they were quickly suppressed. Their entire bodies were squeezed into a puddle of blood and absorbed. These supreme Empyreans acted as if they were strolling in a market. They were leisurely and not anxious at all. Those sovereign emperors who were faster thought that they had already escaped. However, they soon discovered that there was an incomparably huge barrier at the outermost area. It was just like the barrier that they had broken before. No, it should be said that it was the same type of barrier. Immediately, their faces turned extremely pale. They had attacked this kind of barrier once before. Naturally, they knew how difficult it was to break it. However, they were on the offensive side at that time. Hence, they could still endure a little more time. However, they were now in a state of escape. If they were delayed here, who knew how many losses they would suffer? They might even be completely annihilated. At this moment, no matter which camp they were in, there was no longer any meaning. Right now, they could only work together to have a chance of breaking this barrier. Only then could they escape from this horrifying and dangerous place. They didn't even dare to continue staying on the path of creation. There was no doubt that this place was dangerous, especially the Battle Emperor. Previously, Yishuin had already sent someone to inform him that he sensed danger. However, he didn't take it to heart at all. In fact, he didn't even feel that there was any problem. Now, the problem had finally arrived. Yishuin's feeling was right. It was indeed horrifying. Moreover, the Battle Emperor had come to the path of creation more than once. He could be considered a veteran. However, he actually failed here. He looked back and saw that Yi Shiwen was still confronting the primordial Chaos Emperor in the distance. Yi Shiwen didn't retreat at all, not far away from him. The Battle Emperor looked as if he couldn't advance or retreat. If he advanced, he wouldn't be able to provide any help to Yi Shiwen with his combat strength. Instead, he would be killed. If he retreated, this space was the hunting ground of those Empyreans. It seemed even more dangerous. You stay a little further away and defend with all your might. Follow me. There won't be any danger, Yi Shiwen said to the Battle Emperor indifferently. He had to protect the Battle Emperor. Firstly, he didn't have the habit or tradition of abandoning his friends. Secondly, he needed the Battle Emperor to refine the heaven-seizing pill for him. Hence, nothing must happen to the Battle Emperor. The Battle Emperor immediately felt as if he had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. He nodded hurriedly. He felt that his life was safe now. There won't be any danger if I follow you. Aren't you a little too arrogant? The primordial chaos Emperor sneered. He seemed to be mocking Yi Shiwen's arrogance. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen not only wanted to protect himself, but he also wanted to protect the Battle Emperor. This was a kind of madness and arrogance. This isn't arrogance. It's confidence. Yi Shiwen stood with his hands behind his back. After all, you're just a clone. Do you still want to dominate the world? You're simply delusional. It's useless for you to be stubborn now. I'll devour all your blood essence after I kill you. The primordial chaos Emperor shouted coldly. A huge burst of magic power burst out. It was like a huge burning sun. It soared into the sky and directly attacked. A spear appeared in his hand. The spear directly pierced through the sky. It covered the sky and engulfed the world. This spear instantly turned into a terrifying array pattern. It swept up. The entire array pattern seemed to be mobilizing the power of heaven and earth. It wanted to forcibly suppress and kill Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen also did not want to be outdone. His whole body was shining and burning. He stepped forward, and waves of incomparably huge waves appeared under his feet. The Avicii sword appeared in his hand. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a sword light that stabbed into the entire array. Then, he held the Avicii sword in his hand and did not want to be outdone. It went towards a spear. Boom! This battle broke out. They collided in an instant. Both sides were like fierce beasts that were released from their cages. They broke out and collided. The collision of the two huge arrays turned into monstrous waves that swept across the sky. The collision of the god laws burned and turned into a sky full of bloodlight that swept everywhere. Although the primordial Chaos Emperor was only an incarnation, he was a heavenly master. He had some unfathomable means and was extremely tyrannical. Yi Shiwen had surpassed the limit one after another and reached an unimaginable level. The two powerful forces swept across. The Battle Emperor only propped up a barrier in the distance and resisted with all his strength. He did not have to worry about the other heavenly masters coming to kill him. This place had already become the primordial Chaos Emperor's territory. He could rest assured. Clang! The spear and the Avicii sword collided. The violent collision burst out a burst of vibration like the sound of gold and iron colliding. Yi Shiwen felt an astonishing power wreaking havoc in his palm. This was the first time he had encountered such a situation. The Avicii sword had fallen into a disadvantageous position. It had fallen into a disadvantageous position in the collision with Emperor Hunyuan's spear. Chapter 33:16. In the past, when the Avicii sword collided with the other party's weapon, even if it did not gain the upper hand, it would not fall into a disadvantageous position. But now it felt a little powerless. Fortunately, the other party was only an incarnation, and Yi Shiwen's main body was stronger. Otherwise, he would suffer a great loss in this collision. Although the primordial Chaos Emperor was an incarnation, the spear in his hand was most likely the real thing. However, he vaguely remembered that the spear seemed to be locked in a certain place last time. How could it appear at this time? However, Yi Shiwen soon understood why. The spear in his hand wasn't a genuine item. However, the reason why it possessed such might was because the tool's spirit had been extracted from it and poured into another spear. That spear was also a pseudo-Dao tool. It possessed astonishing might. Otherwise, judging from the extent to which the other party could pierce the time robe, the Avicii sword would not just be at a disadvantage. This was an essential gap. Yishuan had not stepped into the heavenly master realm, so he naturally could not compare. But the weapon refined by the heavenly master realm was a different matter. Yishuan was also looking forward to what kind of weapon he could refine after he modified the laws. But he was surprised in his heart, because this degree of disadvantage could be covered up by his gilded tyrant form. After all, it was not the real thing, and it was not the main body, so there was not that much pressure. Whoosh! A spear cut through the eternal peace. In the burning air, it almost recreated the scene of the creation of the world. Just this spear had the power to destroy the world, and it was domineering. This spear almost surpassed everyone's understanding of the laws in martial arts. It was unparalleled, and it shocked the universe. Even if many heavenly venerables were here, they would tremble in fear. This was too terrifying. That was another layer of power that surpassed them. If it wasn't for that, how could these heavenly venerables force so many imperial monarchs to have no choice but to flee? But Yishuan was not afraid. He pinched a seal with both hands and released a monstrous power. The laws hidden in his body condensed into runes, and soon formed a rune storm that rushed straight into the sky, as if it could connect the past and the present and penetrated the entire world. Martial Emperor's Seal. The Martial Emperor's Seal appeared in Yishuan's hand, and it directly collided with the spear. Bang! A terrifying rumbling sound rang out as the great Tao flower bloomed. The two collided intensely, causing the natural laws to burn intensely. Dazzling immortal light blossomed. Vaguely, there seemed to be countless deities chanting sutras. This moment would become eternal. Who would have thought that a battle that surpassed the limits of the human world could erupt here? At this moment, the terror of the primordial chaos sovereign was fully displayed. This spear was the spear of creation, and it directly struck out the fragments of time. The fragments that were flying in the air reflected his face, which was exceptionally cold. Yishuan's expression turned even colder. He had fought several times, but this was the first time he had such an experience. He had always used his skills to crush his enemies and was invincible. But this time, it was completely different. This incarnation of Emperor Primordius was clearly inferior to him in terms of strength, but the magical techniques and principles that it could display were superior to his. This was the reason why they were evenly matched in this battle. Simply put, Yishuan, who was still in the Emperor realm, could display 100% of the same power. This was already the limit of the Emperor realm, but the primordial chaos sovereign could display 120% or 150%. The primordial chaos sovereign's control of the great Tao was above his. This kind of battle was indeed fresh to Yishuan. When I become a heavenly lord, I will go to the end of the road and kill you, Yishuan said faintly, but his hands are displaying all kinds of techniques and martial arts. While fighting with the primordial chaos sovereign, he was also looking for his flaws. Trying to confuse my mind with words? You underestimate me too much. The primordial chaos sovereign sneered. I'm afraid you won't have such a chance. Today, you will fall here. Where will your true body be? Being imprisoned in a cage to prolong one's existence? Yishuan continued to speak indifferently. Nonsense. The primordial chaos sovereign only sneered. Both tried to use words to directly attack the other's heart and make the other reveal flaws, but it was useless. Both of them were peerless geniuses. They would not reveal even the slightest flaw because of words of this level. Whoosh! Yishuan suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes were breathtaking. Between his eyebrows, an incomparably huge divine thought swept out. Then, it turned into a terrifying thought. Suddenly, it rose up and shot out a palm. Universe creation palm. As this palm fell, he felt that all the creation between heaven and earth, all the universe, was under his control, and there was an unpredictable crisis. He originally thought that there should not be anyone among the Emperor realm that could force him to use the universe creation palm. Only someone at the level of the Electric Lord could be suppressed by him. But he did not expect the primordial chaos sovereign to be so terrifying. The 50 level 2 dragon veins burned fiercely, instantly turning into a palm force that swept out. In the outside world, the universe creation palm could still be replenished by the outside world, but here, he could only rely on himself. The primordial chaos sovereign was also caught off guard. He did not expect that Yi Shiwen still had such a move hidden and was directly hit. Boom! The primordial chaos sovereign only felt that his body was about to explode. After all, it was only an incarnation. How could it withstand such a shocking palm? His seemingly eternal expression finally changed. Yi Shiwen did not make a move before and only made a move now. Clearly, he was planning to trick him. This move was really sinister. If he was prepared, although this palm was not easy to deal with, it would not have seriously injured him. Puff! The primordial chaos sovereign spat out a mouthful of blood essence. His whole body flew out like a meteor, slamming into the ground, directly setting off a monstrous wave of dust. The Dendi who was watching the battle not far away was almost scared silly. Yi Shiwen's performance was really too shocking. The terrifying existence that made many Emperor Realm emperors helpless seemed to be nothing in front of him. He was actually seriously injured in an instant. Could it be that the primordial chaos sovereign was actually not so terrifying? Yi Shiwen's attack was successful, and the spiritual power in his body was burning. It made him look like a huge burning sun containing a terrifying power. Whoosh! Suddenly, Yi Shiwen appeared in front of the primordial chaos sovereign. His 5 fingers closed together, forming a knife hand, and directly chopped towards the primordial chaos sovereign. His physical body had long been cultivated to the peak of perfection. This knife hand was not inferior to the full strength attack of a Dao tool. Even if the opponent was a supreme existence like the primordial chaos sovereign, who had already stepped into the heavenly lord realm, to him, there was no difference between him and an ordinary enemy. If he said he would kill, he would kill. Clang! Suddenly, a transparent ancient bronze cauldron appeared around the primordial chaos sovereign, firmly protecting him within it. Yi Shiwen's knife hand did not work and was unable to kill the primordial chaos sovereign. This cauldron is... The Denda's eyes suddenly widened because he had seen this ancient bronze cauldron before. Especially the ancient bronze cauldron, the word medicine on it was particularly eye-catching. This is the medicine sovereign cauldron. The Dendi hurriedly reminded. Medicine sovereign cauldron? Isn't that the magic tool of the medicine sovereign? Yi Shiwen frowned, because he knew the origin of this medicine sovereign cauldron. After he became an emperor, he traveled all over the heavens, quelling all kinds of turmoil. At the same time, he also searched for the relics left by many emperors, including the medicine sovereign. The medicine sovereign was not very famous in the heavens, especially when compared to the emperors. He was even more low-key. He only knew that he had reached the peak of the Tao of medicine and finally became an emperor. It was a bit similar to the Dendi, but also different. However, he still knew about the medicine sovereign cauldron. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared on the left and right of the primordial chaos sovereign. One was an old man with white hair and a youthful face, wearing an imperial robe, and the other was a middle-aged man with a strong figure. They firmly guarded the primordial chaos sovereign from both sides. Yi Shiwen only felt that they seemed familiar, but the Dendi already exclaimed, "Medicine sovereign, tool sovereign." The old man with white hair and a youthful face on the left was the medicine sovereign, and on the other side was the tool sovereign. Yi Shiwen's expression suddenly became dignified. Speaking of the tool sovereign, he had also received a lot of favors from the tool sovereign in the past. In the tool sovereign heaven, he had obtained a lot of benefits, and even obtained a part of the tool sovereign's inheritance. Yi Shiwen's Tao of tool refining was the first step to obtain the tool sovereign's inheritance, and it could be considered as a very high starting point. Although he had not had much contact with the medicine sovereign, but in the heavens, there were very few people who had not received the inheritance of the Dendi and the medicine sovereign in the Tao of medicine. They could be considered as the old seniors among the old seniors. It's actually these 2 people, Yishiwen opened the eye of heavenly punishment, and he clearly saw that although these two people were still exuding terrifying fluctuations and had unimaginable power, they had already lost their original hearts. He could clearly see that inside the bodies of the medicine sovereign and the tool sovereign, there were two souls imprisoned, and they were shedding tears of blood. Those were their souls, and their original hearts were crying, but there was no way they could do it because their bodies had been refined into puppets. The reason why their souls hadn't been erased was also because they could fully display their original strength in this way, so they had to be imprisoned like this for countless years until the end of time. You actually refined them into puppets and controlled their souls. Yishiwen's expression revealed a bit of anger, and a fierce killing intent erupted in his eyes. Under the protection of the two people, the primordial chaos sovereign coughed up a mouthful of blood and sneered and said, "So what? They were able to become Emperor Realm thanks to me, and this is just the time for them to repay me." Chapter 33:17. If it weren't for me, would they still be able to become emperors with their aptitude? Emperor Hun Yuan sneered. They went against the heavens to seize the fortune. How could they not pay the price? They enjoyed all the riches and glory in the world and were respected by the world. This is just a small price to pay. When the Dan Emperor heard this, he felt his entire body trembling. He had also thought things through. Regarding the fortune of becoming a monarch, he once had a chance to obtain it. He was the strongest expert of his generation, but luckily, he chose to reject it in the end. Otherwise, his ending would be the same as these two people right now. A small price. Good. Yishiwen's expression became colder. He had received many favors from the Emperor of Toul. How could he watch him suffer at this time? In this way, it was likely that these two weren't the only ones who'd become Imperial Monarch Primordius puppets in the end. All those who'd relied on fortune to become Imperial Monarch Primordius in history, to become Imperial Monarch Primordius, had probably fallen into his hands. If an ID had not died in his hands, he would have inevitably become a puppet controlled by Imperial Lord Primordial Chaos. He did not know whether to laugh or cry when he thought of this. An ID had tried his best to become an Imperial Emperor, but he probably would not have tried so hard if he knew this would happen. Both of them were standing in front of Yishiwen with boundless domineering auras. However, there was boundless sorrow in Yishiwen's eyes. These two great powerhouses had once looked down upon the world with disdain. They had shaken the world with their might and had tried to dominate the world. However, they had been imprisoned and manipulated into puppets. This was the saddest thing in the world. Fellow Emperor of Toul, I have received favors from you in the past. Now, let me break this imprisonment, release you, and send you into reincarnation. Yishiwen said lightly, but the murderous aura in his words became more and more dignified. Even Dandi Emperor had a kind of sorrow. As Emperor Hun Yuan, they ruled the world and dominated the world. However, they became the puppets of others and were manipulated by others. How could he not feel sad and miserable? Yishiwen knew that Emperor Hun Yuan was trying to buy time. However, the murderous intent in his heart was already blazing and difficult to conceal. His eyes bloomed with terrifying light. Boom! Right at this moment, the Weapon Emperor made his move. Unknowingly, when an incomparably gigantic metal furnace had appeared in his hands. Above this metal furnace, flames gushed out like a raging river. Spreading out, it seemed as though it was going to turn the entire world into ashes. Yishiwen was not the slightest bit afraid. He just opened his mouth. The terrifying power that could burn the world had completely become his food. If it was in the past, perhaps this move of Emperor of Toul could pose a threat to him. However, it was nothing to him now. The Primordial Chaos Emperor didn't expect the Toul Emperor to be able to block Yishiwen for a long time. Then, the iron stove suddenly flipped over and fiercely smashed towards Yishiwen. Yishiwen wasn't flustered at all. He blasted his fist out. Suddenly, heaven and earth split apart. The entire iron furnace shook violently. At the same time, the medicine sovereign cauldron also flew out, erupting with millions upon millions of strands of multicolored light that covered the sky and covered the earth. There were all sorts of Taoist runes on it, and it was like the sound of a sacrificial offering that spanned countless centuries. Yi Emperor of Medicine, Emperor of Yes, Emperor's Emperor T, clang. Another incomparably loud explosion rang out. The entire medicine sovereign cauldron was trembling, but it was unable to move forward at all. Yi Shiwen had single-handedly fought against two ancient emperors of the 10,000 heavens and 10,000 worlds. Only at this time did he reveal his fierceness and his extremely terrifying means. Moreover, the tool emperor and the medicine emperor also had a tacit understanding with each other. They simultaneously launched a pincer attack towards Yi Shiwen from both sides. The two Dao tools rushed towards Yi Shiwen at the same time. Yi Shiwen let out a huge roar. Behind him, his great path manifested. I am invincible. This was his supreme imprint. The pincer attack of these two people didn't make Yi Shiwen flustered in the slightest. Fellow Taoists, watch me save you. He truly made his move. With a thunderous roar, his voice towered up into the 9 heavens. After that, he moved with lightning speed as a gigantic palm slammed out, slapping the medicine sovereign's cauldron away. After that, his palm didn't slow down at all as it slammed into the medicine sovereign. Bang! The medicine sovereign's figure suddenly stagnated. It was as if a martial artist of the mortal world had his acupoints sealed. He couldn't move at all. Yi Shiwen had regained his mobility in a short period of time. However, such a short period of time was enough for him. He flew and arrived in front of the Tool Emperor. His iron furnace smashed down and poured out an endless amount of molten iron. It seemed as if mercury was leaking out from the bottom and spread out horizontally. However, none of these couldn't get close to Yi Shiwen. They were directly blocked by his time magic robe. The time magic robe bloomed with billions of strands of immortal light and directly locked the iron furnace in a stalemate. The iron furnace couldn't pour down. After that, Yi Shiwen smoothly arrived in front of the Tool Emperor. He slapped his hand, and the Tool Emperor didn't have time to react. Although his strength was extraordinary, it was nothing in front of Yi Shiwen. When his 5 fingers touched the chest of the Tool Emperor, it instantly turned into a seal and slapped on the chest of the Tool Emperor. Rumble! A series of incomparably loud rumbles rang out. Terrifying power wreaked havoc and swept out. The Emperor of Divinity's physical body exploded on the spot. His primordial spirit also manifested. Because his primordial spirit was imprisoned, it was not distributed to every corner of his body. Instead, it was concentrated inside his body. At the moment when his body exploded, the hidden trump cards of Emperor Primordial Chaos were about to be activated and completely destroy his spirit. But this seal stuck on them, sealing all the trump cards. Yi Shiwen's understanding of the realm was not as good as Emperor Primordial Chaos, so he didn't bother to undo these trump cards, and simply sealed them all. After getting rid of the control of Emperor Primordial Chaos, the spirit of the Tool Emperor cupped his hands and bowed slightly towards Yi Shiwen. He was thanking Yi Shiwen for saving him, but his spirit began to gradually become transparent. His spirit itself had already been severely injured. Previously, it was only forcefully imprisoned. Now that the imprisonment was gone, it was naturally dissipating. Moreover, he didn't have much consciousness, and only some instinctive will was left. A dignified emperor ended up like this in the end, which made people sigh. Yi Shiwen sighed and split a clone, and then began to recite the expiate person scripture. In an instant, the entire space resounded with the sound of Yi Shiwen reciting the scripture. With his current cultivation, he could easily expiate billions of creatures at the same time, but it was not easy to send an emperor who had already left the 3 realms and was not in the 5 elements into the reincarnation. This was also why emperors were often dead, and rarely could they be reborn, because they were not in the 3 realms, nor were they in the 5 elements. Since they were not under the jurisdiction of heaven and earth naturally couldn't let them be reborn. At the same time, the medicine emperor, who had just regained his mobility, directly rushed towards Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen also used the same method, smashing the medicine emperor's body, exposing the spirit within, and then sent his spirit into the reincarnation of heaven and earth with the expiate person scripture. Of course, with the spirit of these two people, it was impossible to enter the reincarnation with complete memories. That was simply impossible. Probably, only a wisp of spirit would be reincarnated. In the past, Yi Shiwen had encountered many such people. These people were born geniuses, and because of the deep accumulation of their previous life, they could achieve twice the results with half the effort in cultivation. They could easily stand out from the mortals and achieve the supreme way. Finally, a wisp of spirit could enter the reincarnation instead of being completely destroyed. In fact, for an emperor, it was already a rare good ending. Tool Emperor and Medicine Emperor finally showed their figures, and after bowing to Yi Shiwen, they dissipated and went to reincarnation. You destroyed 2 of my puppets. Today, you can't atone for your sins, even if you die 100 times. Only by staying here and becoming my puppet can you make up for your sins. When Yi Shiwen sent the 2 great emperors into the reincarnation, Emperor Primordial Chaos had also almost recovered. Because it was only a clone, even its recovery was very slow. Of course, even so, it was already shocking that it could recover so quickly after being hit by Yi Shiwen's universe creation palm. However, it couldn't be compared with the main body. Haha, death is imminent, and you still don't know it, Yi Shiwen said faintly. In his body, there was an unparalleled scripture chanting. Moreover, it could make the rules in the sky burn thoroughly, roll back, and transform into a terrifying power to add to his body. All of this was completely activated under his Eye of Sky punishment. The Eye of Sky punishment could add the power of the heavenly way to his body. His strength was already second to none and extremely powerful. Now his strength had soared to a limit, and he had truly touched the edge of the heavenly master realm. In this state, there was naturally a price to pay. A large amount of spiritual energy was burning at every moment. But at this time, Emperor Primordial Chaos had thoroughly angered him, and the killing intent in his heart could not be hidden at all. Even if his technique and comprehension were not as good as Emperor Primordial Chaos, he would crush him with absolute tyrannical strength. In the face of absolute power, any kind of technique and comprehension was meaningless. Boom! Yi Shiwen made a move. In an instant, the world trembled violently, as if the entire world was about to collapse. In his hand, the sky-flipping seal rotated and then suddenly blasted towards Emperor Primordial Chaos. Emperor Primordial Chaos also made a move, not to be outdone. A long spear cut through the sky. This was definitely a rare, peerless powerhouse. A shocking battle finally broke out. Chapter 33:18. It was as if the sky had collapsed and was crashing down. For the entire world, it was the end of the world. The scene of the 2 attacking was exceptionally beautiful from afar. Hundreds of millions of immortal lights scattered in all directions. Light rain danced and divine clouds filled the sky. It was like a legendary paradise. However, Alchemy Emperor, who was watching from close distance, was tense all over. He did not dare to relax at all because he knew very well that this beautiful scene of light rain dancing and divine clouds filling the sky represented endless slaughter. It had nothing to do with beauty, only slaughter. Boom! The 2 collided directly. The sparks created by the collision formed flowers of the great Tao. They undulated up and down and fluttered all over the sky. However, each flower of the great Tao could destroy the world, burning brilliantly and extremely terrifying. Thump, thump, thump. In this collision, the 2 sides were no longer evenly matched. Emperor Hun Yuan was forced to retreat again and again. It was obvious that he was at a disadvantage in this collision. It was not as evenly matched as before. Yi Shiwen had been able to fight evenly with Emperor Hun Yuan. So, he had become even more different after he had enhanced his strength with the help of the Eye of Heaven Punishment. And at this moment, Yi Shiwen's attack, almost like a shadow, had already arrived. A big foot descended from the sky, directly trampling down on Emperor Hunyuan. This was the rhythm of trampling him to death. How dare you trample on me? Emperor Hunyuan blocked Yi Shiwen's kick, and then he spoke in a cold voice. In his opinion, this was simply a form of contempt and humiliation. He'd actually been looked down upon and humiliated by an emperor monarch. This was an extraordinary humiliation. This was equivalent to slapping him hard in the face. So what if I trample on you? If I hadn't cultivated for a few years earlier, what are you? Yi Shiwen could not help but sneer. He did not take this matter seriously at all. So what if you were a heavenly master? Today, I will kill your incarnation first. In the future, I will kill your real body. Yi Shiwen said coldly. But just as his voice fell, the sky suddenly exploded. He flew forward like a rock spreading its wings, directly pouncing towards the primordial Chaos Emperor. Humph! Yi Shiwen, it's indeed beyond my expectations that you've reached such a level. However, this world isn't what you think it is. Sometimes strength is a tragedy. Emperor Primordial Chaos said coldly as he clashed with Yi Shiwen. He was also an extremely tyrannical figure and an invincible existence. Naturally, he wouldn't admit defeat so easily. Even if he fell into a slight disadvantage, he was not to be outdone by Yi Shiwen. Then it can only mean that you're not strong enough. Yi Shiwen roared. He didn't take Emperor Hunyuan's words seriously at all. He just continued to deliver the attacks at hand. They erupted like a storm. Boom, boom, boom. Deafening explosions rang out in the sky. Imperial Monarch Primordius had practically pushed his spear arts to the limit. Every time he thrust his spear, he would be able to stab out thousands of huge spear shadows that pierced through the world and sealed off everything. It could almost be said that this technique had been displayed to the limit. It was very powerful and terrifying. However, it was useless in front of Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen's attack was simple and unadorned. All the magical powers were concentrated on his fist. It was just a simple punch, but it surpassed everything. Strength, crushing strength, was enough to break all struggles. This was just like when Yi Shiwen had fought against Emperor Primordius for the first time. No matter what methods he had used, and even all kinds of unique techniques, it was still useless because he couldn't defeat Emperor Primordius. Emperor Hunyuan could defeat him with a simple method because of his overwhelming strength. Now, this situation had obviously changed. The one who had the upper hand was no longer Emperor Hunyuan, but Yi Shiwen. With his strength, it was enough to break any struggle of Emperor Hunyuan. Yi Shiwen's eyes were full of a cold and ruthless look, as if he didn't care about Emperor Hunyuan's matter at all. Emperor Hunyuan, you don't have to struggle anymore. In this domain, I am the invincible powerhouse. Challenging me is the biggest mistake in your life. Yi Shiwen said with a sneer. You want to suppress me with just you? Emperor Hunyuan said, his expression a little dignified. He no longer had the calmness he had at the beginning. After all, he wasn't the main body, so it was a fact that he was at a disadvantage. However, Yi Shiwen's combat strength didn't seem to have fallen. If this continued, his defeat was only a matter of time. This was absolutely unacceptable. Even if it was only a condensed clone and not the main body, he would never allow himself to lose to such an emperor. Otherwise, it would be a great shame. So what if I suppress you? Who do you think you are? Fortune Heaven Monarch? Yi Shiwen sneered. His hand changed into the overturning sky seal and directly smashed down. Boom! Emperor Hunyuan only felt that the spear in his hand began to tremble violently. Yi Shiwen's strength was constantly increasing. Even without the Fortune Heaven and Earth Palm, the power was still terrifying. In a situation where he wasn't the main body, it was simply impossible for him to compete with Yi Shiwen. After all, this clone of his had not reached the level of invincibility and ignoring everything. Although his understanding of the laws was far better than Yi Shiwen's, under the tyrannical and invincible suppression of Yi Shiwen's tyrannical skill, that little advantage was already nothing. Whoosh! Emperor Hunyuan retreated again and again, avoiding Yi Shiwen's attack and follow-up attacks. However, Yi Shiwen's attack almost instantly fell. A hand blade split the world. Yi Shiwen's physical body had really reached an incredible realm. The primordial chaos emperor's body also seemed to have completely dissipated under the force of this chop. It's an after-image. In an instant, Yi Shiwen had already seen it. His eye of sky punishment was open all the time, but he still couldn't see it. It could be seen that Emperor Huanyuan's ingenuity in the cultivation of the laws in this aspect was already beyond the imagination of ordinary people. However, at this moment, Emperor Primordial Chaos had unknowingly arrived behind him. The spear in his hand pierced straight towards Yi Shiwen's body as if it could split the heavens and earth. In an instant, the world trembled. All of this was simply indescribable. Immortal light danced, the world shook, and the spear directly hit Yi Shiwen's body. However, Yi Shiwen didn't even look at it. Although the spear fell on his body, it still couldn't break the defense of the time robe. Emperor Huanyuan, do you want to use the same trick again? It's a pity that you don't have that ability now. Yi Shiwen sneered. He slashed his sword backhandedly and directly split the world into two halves. It was as if a painting had been torn into two halves. In the past, Yi Shiwen was pierced by Emperor Huanyuan's spear like this. Even his time robe was blasted through, and he was almost killed. Later on, Yi Shiwen repaired the time robe, allowing the time robe to improve on this foundation and become even more powerful. Therefore, although this spear seemed terrifying and sudden, it did not cause the same effect as before. On the contrary, Yi Shiwen took the opportunity to reach out and grab the spear. With a sudden pull, Emperor Primordius couldn't control his body at all and was pulled over. At the same time, a vigorous spiritual power surged out of Yi Shiwen's body. In an instant, it seemed as if it had been sucked dry. It was completely ignited and directly poured into his body. Then, it poured into his arm and turned into a monstrous palm force. Universe Creation Palm. Yi Shiwen roared and slapped the sun and moon in the sky with his palm, directly hitting Emperor Huanyuan's chest. Boom! Primordial Chaos Empyrean Lord was directly hit, and a loud sound like the clashing of metal rang out, accompanied by a clanging sound. Then, only to see Emperor Huanyuan spit out a mouthful of blood, and then his whole body was instantly sent flying. He was seriously injured again, but unlike before, this time there was a big hole directly in Emperor Huanyuan's chest, almost as if it was going to be pierced on the spot. One must know that Yi Shiwen had made a huge improvement compared to just now. In this state, he had even touched the threshold of the heavenly master realm. He could perceive the existence of that layer of reliance. Naturally, it would be completely different if he were to attack again at this time. Primordial Chaos Emperor was hit directly, and his entire body almost collapsed. Within those cracks, rays of light splashed out in all directions, as if they were about to burst out in an instant. Emperor Huanyuan was seriously injured, and immediately became furious. What kind of existence was he? What kind of great existence was he? Yet he was seriously injured by Yi Shiwen again and again. This was a great shame, but at this time he had to retreat again and again to escape from Yi Shiwen's attack range to get a chance to breathe. How could Yi Shiwen give him a chance to escape? He immediately chased after him and launched another storm-like attack. However, he didn't use the Universe Creation Palm this time. The power of the Universe Creation Palm must be extremely great in order to injure Emperor Primordius. Therefore, the wealth required to use it was also extremely frightening. If he continued to use it, he wouldn't be able to afford such consumption. Therefore, he chose to attack selectively. But even so, the power of this attack was astonishing enough. A series of storm-like attacks was enough to force the already heavily injured Primordius Emperor into a dead end. His life was in danger, and many of the laws of the origin of life were forced out of his body. After all, this was not his true body, and his physical body was only formed temporarily. It had not been formed for many years, so he was at a complete disadvantage. He was directly in a desperate situation. Chapter 33:19. Every time Yi Shiwen hit Emperor Primordius's body, it was as if he would be blasted into atoms. Under such circumstances, Emperor Primordius had no possibility of fighting back at all. He could only resist with all his might to avoid being killed by Yi Shiwen on the spot. That would be a great shame. His face was extremely sullen, but he had no choice but to bow his head at this time. There was no other way. This time, he was really going to suffer a double loss. In order to set up this shocking situation, each of these people had taken out a lot of law crystals. Otherwise, how could there be so many law crystals condensed here? But now, the other celestial masters were killing the emperors to replenish their consumption, and he was delayed here by Yi Shiwen. It was really a miscalculation. He thought that although Yi Shiwen was strong, he should not be a match for him. He wanted to get rid of this guy, first to get rid of future troubles. Who knew that not only did he not get rid of future troubles, but he might also die here. How could this not be a double loss? Yi Shiwen's attacks were airtight. This time, he was really going to kill Emperor Primordius. In the void, a blazing electric light erupted, almost turning into thousands of figures with the power of one person. Among them were the shadows of the Eye of Divine Punishment, and also the shadows of his 3,000 martial arts. This kind of move was a little difficult to deal with Emperor Primordius at his peak, but at this time, it was very suitable. Tens of thousands of runes flew out of Emperor Primordial Chaos's body, all of which were condensed from the loss. Some of them were created by Yi Shiwen's attacks, while others flew out on their own to contend with Yi Shiwen. They erupted with the most dazzling light. The heavens and the earth shattered, and the battlefield shook. Even the sturdy space in the path of creation couldn't withstand their collisions, and it almost exploded instantly. This kind of matchless divine power made people tremble. Even the Pill Emperor in the distance felt his heart tremble. Such a wisp of aura overflowing was enough to seriously injure him. Emperor Primordius kept retreating, using all his strength to escape from Yi Shiwen's attack range. Want to leave? Do you think you can? Yi Shiwen shouted and stomped down fiercely towards Emperor Primordial Chaos. It was as if he wanted to crush the heavens and the earth. Boom! There was a soundless collision, and an aura of annihilation wantonly spread out. The entire space seemed to be on the verge of shattering. What a terrifying collision. Emperor Primordial Chaos's body was torn apart on the spot. This kind of method could be said to be very amazing. With Yi Shiwen's strength, this was already the best he could do. Dan Emperor was completely scared silly. He always seemed to be able to see miracles when he followed Yi Shiwen. This time was no exception. Yi Shiwen was too ferocious under the eye of heaven punishment. Even a terrifying character like Emperor Primordius could be casually beaten without any pressure. Roar! In the distance, Emperor Primordial Chaos recondensed into his human form and stared at Yi Shiwen with a ferocious expression. He had directly abandoned most of his physical body and chose to condense a part of it. Otherwise, how could he have escaped Yi Shiwen's attack? Directly abandoning most of his physical body could be said to be a serious injury. With only a small part of his physical body left, he was extremely weak. He had never been forced into such a desperate situation before. Even his avatar was no exception. In his eyes, Yi Shiwen's expression was incomparably ferocious. The person who was beaten by him last time now had the ability to beat him. Even if it was just a clone, it was still unacceptable. Yi Shiwen's expression did not change, but he was slightly stunned at his heart. Emperor Primordius's decisiveness was indeed amazing. He was able to decisively abandon most of his physical body. If it was an ordinary emperor, he might have abandoned most of his lifetime's cultivation. This was not a decision that ordinary people could have. In front of Yi Shiwen, the physical body that was abandoned by Emperor Primordius began to crumble inch by inch. Soon, it turned into a rain of light and dissipated in the sky. Without the injection of spirit, these physical bodies were purely a mass of energy. Abandoning my physical body is just to prolong my hunger for a while more. Why bother? Yi Shiwen said faintly. This Emperor Primordius was indeed very difficult to deal with. If he had not defeated Yi Huang, Dian Jun, and the others, It would have been very difficult for him to fight against Emperor Primordius with his cultivation that had just entered the path of creation, let alone beating him up. It was simply a miracle. As an emperor, you are indeed the first to force me to this extent. The primordial chaos monarch spoke up slowly. A torrential amount of energy burst forth from his body like a boundless waterfall that was incomparably majestic. It extended out for several tens of millions of miles, drowning the entire space within the barrier. Any monarch that came into contact with it would definitely die without a burial ground. At this moment, he seemed to have regained his initial calmness. His entire body was radiating light, and he was filled with a demonic aura. His gaze was sharp, and he held a spear in his hand. He looked peerless and mighty. However, his aura couldn't be compared to when he first entered the path of creation. He was an existence on a completely different level. It's just killing a clone of yours. What's the big deal? I'll kill my way into the depths of the path of creation in the future and kill your main body. Yishiwen said faintly, as if he was talking about a trivial matter. What's the point of you still struggling at this point? Emperor Primordius glanced at Yishiwen and said, "You're too arrogant. Your journey has been too smooth, and you've forgotten that this world isn't decided by your will. There are too many unknown existences that can kill you. Indeed, I'm not invincible, but it's more than enough to destroy a clone of yours," said Yishiwen. Emperor Primordius sneered and didn't say another word. He just let out a loud roar, and then he flipped his palm over. A drop of blood appeared in his hand. What kind of blood was this? A drop of blood that seemed like the entire world. It seemed as if this drop of blood contained the terrifying energy of an entire world. However, this energy was locked within the blood and hadn't been completely released. But just by looking at it from afar, one could already sense how terrifying this drop of blood was. Emperor Primordius didn't say anything. He just squeezed a drop of blood and scattered it into his body. In an instant, his magic power surged and surpassed his limits. A monstrous power descended upon his body. This is a drop of blood from my main body. It was originally just a precaution, but I never expected that it would come in handy one day. Emperor Primordius's expression grew even more indifferent and indifferent. The surging power raged within his body. The spear in his hand trembled slightly. Suddenly, the entire space was torn apart, and a terrifying whistling sound bloomed. It went straight for Yishiwen's face. In an instant, tens of thousands of great Tao runes bloomed on the tip of the spear. It could only be described as unparalleled. "So this is your trump card?" Yishiwen suddenly opened his mouth. The time robe on his body suddenly blossomed with a terrifying radiance, and he released the time domain. Time seemed to have slowed down all of a sudden. The spear that was originally moving at an extreme speed was slowed down. The dragon vein in Yishiwen's body burned fiercely. This spear was really too terrifying. The more intense the time domain was, the more dragon veins needed to be burned. This was proportional. I've been waiting for a long time. Heavenly Master's blood essence. Yishiwen laughed, as if he had already expected this. He easily dodged the spear and slapped out with his white palm. In the time domain, his body wouldn't be slowed down. In an instant, his palm hit Emperor Primordius's chest. Universe Creation Palm. The palm power of the Universe Creation Palm was released in an instant, and a terrifying aura erupted. The airwave swept across the entire space like a shocking wave. It was incomparably magnificent. This was an extremely powerful technique that was rarely seen. The power of this palm even shocked the other heavenly masters. These peerless powerhouses who had dominated for most of their lives. What had they not seen? But this palm still made them horrified. Their expressions changed slightly. It was extremely terrifying. Boom! Emperor Primordius's body directly exploded. He hadn't used all his techniques, and this drop of Heavenly Master's blood essence hadn't been completely refined when he was hit by Yishiwen's heavy attack. Before he could react, his body exploded. Many pieces in the void turned into a sky full of light rain on the spot and dissipated into thin air. Some were directly vaporized, destroyed by the palm power. Among these fragments, a drop of blood essence reappeared. If it wasn't the blood essence of Emperor Primordius, then what could it be? This drop of blood essence hadn't spread, and Emperor Primordius hadn't detonated the energy within it before he was severely injured by Yi Shiwen. No one expected that Yi Shiwen would be so decisive. In other words, he had been waiting for this final trump card of Emperor Primordius. Naturally, he couldn't just watch as Emperor Primordius obtained the final blessing and the two sides fought again. Emperor Primordius's broken body squirmed as if he wanted to grab this drop of blood essence in his hand. Unfortunately, before he could do so, a big hand directly grabbed this drop of blood essence. Yi Shiwen felt the surging power in the drop of blood essence in his hand, and a boundless will spread out. This was the will and power of Emperor Primordius's original body. It was originally used as a trump card for his avatar. He could feel that if the energy of this drop of blood essence was completely refined by Emperor Primordius, then his combat power would also increase by several levels. It was even possible for him to reach the Heavenly Master realm for a short period of time. After all, his realm was still there. Fortunately, he killed him in time. In the distance, Emperor Primordius tried to condense his body, but it was useless. Yi Shiwen directly blasted out the 6 paths of reincarnation fist, completely blasting Emperor Primordius's broken body, which didn't have much power left, into a rain of light. Chapter 33:20. In the end, Emperor Hunyuan's body was smashed by Yi Shiwen's punch and turned into a rain of light. Yi Shiwen held a drop of the Heavenly Master's blood essence in his hand. Although it was only a drop of blood essence, it contained terrifying power. It was not ordinary blood essence, but heart blood. For any powerhouse, heart blood was the most precious thing. Losing a drop could mean losing 10,000 years, 100,000 years, or even millions of years of cultivation. It was far greater than spitting out a mouthful of blood essence. For Yi Shiwen himself, spitting out dozens of mouthfuls of blood essence wouldn't hurt his foundation. However, if he spat out a mouthful of blood essence, his vitality would be severely damaged. He might need to rest for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years to recover. It should be known that Yi Shiwen had only cultivated for 50,000 years. However, spitting out a mouthful of blood essence would require him to recover for hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years. The difficulty of this was evident. After obtaining this drop of blood essence, Yi Shiwen's face finally revealed a smile. With this drop of blood essence, if Yi Shiwen could refine it, not only would it help his cultivation greatly increase, but it would also help him comprehend the laws of the Heavenly Masters. For powerhouses who had cultivated to this level, the laws had already penetrated into every aspect of their bodies. Even using the laws to create the most perfect body was just a piece of cake. Because of this, their blood essence often contained a considerable amount of laws. It was just that ordinary people couldn't analyze them. However, this was the easiest thing for Yi Shiwen. Because he had the mysterious space, he believed that he could even analyze the laws of an Empyrean. This was his greatest source of confidence. Otherwise, this drop of an Empyrean's heart blood would only be able to increase his cultivation by a bit. It would be impossible for him to undergo a qualitative transformation. Taoist Wu Di, are you all right? Dinda saw that Yi Shiwen seemed to have calmed down, so he hurriedly stepped forward and said. At this moment, his attitude had also become much more humble. This was because he knew that Yi Shiwen was really not far from the legendary Heavenly Master realm. Once he entered that realm, he would jump out and become a real chess player. He would be able to control the changes of the fortune world. He would be a completely different person. Addressing him as Taoist Wu Di was already flattering him. It could even be said that the two of them weren't on the same level at all. It's fine. It's just a clone. It won't hurt him at all. Yi Shiwen said. There seemed to be a hint of regret in his words. It would have been great if he had destroyed the main body of Emperor Hunyuan. Then he would truly have nothing to worry about. Alchemy Emperor was also a little speechless when he heard this. That was a celestial sovereign. Who would dare to say that they wanted to destroy their original bodies? Even if it was a celestial sovereign who was in a state of prostration, it was not someone they could afford to offend. It could even be said that the difference between a celestial sovereign and a sovereign was even greater. That was because the essence of cultivation between a celestial sovereign and a sovereign was the same thing. It was nothing more than a difference in the degree of mastery. And sovereign was an existence that a celestial sovereign had cultivated to the extreme in a certain law or a certain field. However, after reaching the celestial sovereign realm, it was not as simple as comprehending a certain law to the extreme and opening up their own path. They could even modify this law through their own existence. That was another realm. It was far more exaggerated than cultivating to the extreme. It was like no matter how hard you worked to understand the rules of a game, when you thought that you had reached the end and could touch that existence, the person would simply flip the table and modify the law. Then, the law that you had previously cultivated would be meaningless because the law would no longer be the same as what you had cultivated. It was fine if it was not the same system. If it was the same system, for example, the same cultivation of the law of fire, then it would be completely suppressed. It was almost impossible to resist, because no matter how much he resisted, as long as the celestial sovereign modified the law of fire, then everything that he had previously cultivated, recognized, and confirmed would collapse. There was no way to resist at all. Only a celestial sovereign could fight against a celestial sovereign. This was also widely known. Therefore, those sovereigns would rarely have the idea of fighting against a celestial sovereign, let alone killing a celestial sovereign. That was simply the craziest idea. For Yishiwen, this was not a big deal. A celestial sovereign was just a pioneer on the road of cultivation. Sooner or later, he would also step into this field. This was not a big deal. He had paid a huge price in this battle. Whether it was using the universe creation palm or entering the state of the Eye of Heaven punishment, he had consumed a huge amount of dragon vein. If it was not for the incomplete king-level dragon vein, he was afraid that he would not have been able to withstand it. Even so, the king-level dragon vein had shrunk to a degree that was visible to the naked eye. This was a king-level dragon vein that only a few celestial sovereigns possessed. It had shrunk so much. It was obvious how much it had consumed. However, he had also gained a lot from this battle. It allowed him to take a step closer to the celestial sovereign realm. Most importantly, he had also obtained the heart of Emperor Primordial Chaos. This Emperor Primordial Chaos was probably not at the bottom of the celestial sovereigns. He was not a weakling. If he could refine the heart of Emperor Primordial Chaos, the benefits it would bring to him would be unimaginable. At this time, after Yishiwen put away the heart of Emperor Primordial Chaos, he looked around. At this time, the great hunt between the celestial sovereigns had also ended. In the end, with the efforts of many sovereigns, they still broke the barrier and escaped. Even so, nearly 300 sovereigns had died in the process. They had become food for these powerful celestial sovereign avatars and were absorbed one after another. These celestial sovereigns had set this trap to attract these sovereigns. Now, they had finally achieved this goal. Yishiwen guessed that according to the information he had obtained before, these celestial sovereigns were probably really trapped in a certain place on the path of creation. They could not get any replenishment for a long time, and even had to consume a large amount of spiritual power and blood essence. Now, they were probably on the verge of death. That was why they were thinking of ways to send their avatars out to kill these sovereigns and replenish their consumption. Although there was a huge gap between these sovereigns and them, they were still closer to them than ordinary creatures. If they killed more of them, they would be able to extract enough blood essence to replenish their consumption. This was also the reason why they were willing to take out so many law crystals to set a trap. Although law crystals were precious, no matter how precious they were, could they be more precious than their own lives? In order to survive, these celestial sovereigns were not afraid of anything at all. They did not care about anything, appearing cold and ruthless. When they killed those sovereigns, They were like terrifying killing machines. At this time, those celestial sovereigns did not pursue further. If they really forced those sovereigns into a corner, these avatars might not be able to get away with it. After all, they had not descended with their true bodies, so they could not truly suppress them. They should be satisfied that they had survived like this. It allowed them to hold on for a while longer and not die immediately. When they returned, they were shocked to find that Emperor Primordial Chaos did not kill Yi Shiwen. Instead, he was killed by Yi Shiwen. They immediately became vigilant. Although their alliance was not solid, they were standing on the same line at this time. How could they not be shocked when facing Yi Shiwen? This was a person who could threaten their existence. They thought that with the strength of their avatars, it was enough to crush everything and complete the task. They did not expect that such a peerless character would appear among the sovereigns. He could kill their avatars instead. This was already a miracle, and such a miracle made them feel danger. Seeing the other celestial sovereigns returning, Dendi immediately became nervous. The battle between Yi Shiwen and Emperor Primordial Chaos just now made him deeply understand how terrifying these celestial sovereigns were. Even if they were only avatars, they had reached the peak of the sovereign realm. Yi Shiwen might be able to defeat and kill them, but that was because Yi Shiwen was abnormal. If it was someone else, they might not be able to kill them. The nearly 300 sovereigns who died in their hands were proof. It could even be said that each of them had slaughtered dozens of sovereigns. If such a number was spread out, it would be enough to shock and terrify the entire fortune world. If those great figures who were once high and mighty became the incarnations of executioners, how terrifying would it be? Yi Shiwen was not worried. This battle allowed him to understand the details of these celestial sovereigns' avatars. After all, they had not broken away from the shackles of the sovereign realm. As long as they did not step into the celestial sovereign realm, there was nothing for him to be afraid of. Although he would have to pay a hefty price, he was not afraid. Fortunately, those people were also very afraid of Yi Shiwen, so they did not step forward. They just surrounded him, and no one stepped forward. Although they also knew that Yi Shiwen was very strong, and killing him might be able to replenish more vitality than killing 10 or 20 Emperor Kings. But his strength also deeply shocked them. They had seen the fate of Emperor Primordial Chaos Avatar. Although the strength of their original bodies was different, the avatars were similar because of the shackles of the sovereign realm. Emperor Primordial Chaos was not a match for him, so the result would be similar if they fought alone. Why are you still not leaving? Don't tell me that you intend to exchange blows with me? Yi Shiwen paused, and then asked in a loud voice. The few great celestial sovereigns finally decided to leave after looking at each other. In the end, the battle that was on the verge of breaking out did not break out. The few of them just faintly disappeared in the sky, leaving not a trace behind. Seeing this, Dendi heaved a sigh of relief. In the end, they did not fight. If these people joined forces, even with Yi Shiwen's strength, it would be difficult to avoid a grudge. Chapter 33:21. Yi Shiwen didn't know what Alchemy Emperor was thinking. If he did, he would only shake his head and laugh. Although Alchemy Emperor seemed to have overestimated him, he had actually underestimated him. It wasn't that he couldn't kill these heavenly master avatars, but he would have to pay a huge price. He didn't care about Electric Lord at the same cultivation level, but it was completely different for heavenly masters like Emperor Primordius. They had heavenly master realm cultivation, and the combat power they could display was far superior to ordinary heavenly masters. Not to mention, they had trump cards like Emperor Primordius. If they really fought, he would have to pay a huge price. This was Yi Shiwen's disadvantage in terms of cultivation level. He could only rely on his powerful strength. However, the harvest from this battle was huge. He felt that he was one step closer to the heavenly master realm. Moreover, with so many law crystals in hand, the probability of his breakthrough would be much higher. All he needed now was time to break through. All right, let's retreat and leave the path of fortune quickly. After this incident, I'm afraid no one will stay here. Although Yi Shiwen wasn't afraid of these heavenly master avatars, He didn't want to stay here because he didn't know if these heavenly master avatars would show their true bodies one day. If that was the case, the consequences would be unpredictable. Moreover, he needed a place to cultivate in seclusion. The path of fortune was filled with danger everywhere. It wasn't a good place for a breakthrough. He naturally wouldn't stay. Most importantly, he had collected enough law crystals. If he continued to stay, the gains wouldn't make up for the losses. Yes, Alchemy Emperor nodded quickly. He didn't want to stay after this series of unforeseen events. He had achieved his purpose of coming here and obtained what he wanted. There was naturally nothing left for him to stay. The two left quickly and flew in the direction of the crack. This time, there weren't any disturbances, and they left the crack easily. The entire creation realm was in an uproar because of the words revealed by the emperors who had left previously. The crack that had originally opened began to gradually shrink, and the various clans also notified the emperors who had entered to leave. There had always been a rumor that a heavenly venerable was trapped inside, but these were merely rumors and had never been confirmed. But now, this rumor had been confirmed, and the price of confirming this rumor was the death of several hundred Emperor Realm experts, including the Fortune Divine Dynasty's Emperor Realm experts, as well as Foreign Domains Emperor Realm experts. These heavenly venerates appeared cold and emotionless. Regardless of what camp they were from, they didn't seem to be soft-hearted when it came to killing. On the contrary, they seemed even more cold and emotionless. After the news spread, it spread throughout the entire Fortune realm almost overnight, causing the entire Fortune realm to fall into a state of panic. Under such circumstances, the crack that maintained the path of creation naturally could not be maintained any longer. Originally, maintaining it for every minute and every second would require a huge price, and it was only for the sake of obtaining the more important law crystal that he had no choice but to activate it. Now that it had lost its value, he naturally couldn't continue to activate it. This time, the vigorous journey on the path of creation ended anticlimactic in the end, and the curtains were drawn. In the end, just like before, he didn't find the fabled fortune. This result should have been within everyone's expectations, but no one had expected so many Emperor Realm experts and Emperor-level life forms to die in the end. Including those that had fallen before, the number of Emperor Realm experts and Emperor-level life forms that had died in the path of creation was truly depressing. Any one of them was a super big shot that could shake the world and dominate a region, especially the sects that they had established. At this time, it was as if the sky had fallen and the earth had cracked. Their pillars, the invincible existences that were like the pillars that supported the heavens, had fallen in the path of creation just like that. From then on, they had fallen from the sects that had Emperor Realm experts to the status of ordinary immortal inheritances. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. The sects that had Emperor Realm experts were super dominators that dominated a region, and they were behemoths that could communicate with the Fortune Divine Dynasty's higher-ups. However, ordinary immortal inheritances were at most ordinary local tyrants. Although they were the main force of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, the Fortune Divine Dynasty wouldn't even spare them a glance. It could be said that the sky had fallen and the earth had cracked. Even the super sects that had many Emperor Realm experts had suffered a great blow after losing so many Emperor Realm experts. Every Emperor Realm expert was an important part of the super sects, and the loss of one was a big deal. When a number of Emperor Realm experts reached a certain level, it was enough to make their hearts bleed. Among these Emperor Realm experts, there were even more Emperor Realm experts that had fallen. Even the Fortune Divine Dynasty, which had a deep foundation and was rich and imposing, had no choice but to bury their heads and digest the news for a period of time. It could be said that because of the fall of these Emperor Realm experts, the entire Fortune world was in a precarious situation. Every household was blanketed in white, and every door wept in mourning. No one knew how long it would take to recover from such a loss. It might take hundreds of thousands of years, or even millions of years, to recover. But this was impossible. Because of the fall of these Emperor Realm experts, the entire Fortune world would inevitably face a huge reshuffle, because these Emperor Realm experts had more or less occupied important benefits. Originally, when they were still around, their strength was enough to control the situation. But now that they had fallen, they naturally had no way to protect such huge benefits. In order to compete for these benefits, there would inevitably be a reign of terror. Those large sects and noble clans that had lost their backing would inevitably face suppression, and in serious cases, they might even be persuaded to be destroyed. Such a thing was not impossible. In fact, it had happened many times in the past. Every time it happened, the entire Fortune realm would be reshuffled. After every cruel purge, a new structure would be formed, and this structure would usually last for a very long time. This was also known, so those large sects that had fallen Emperor Realm experts were making use of all the time they had to prepare. Some to find new backers, and some to consolidate their existing territories. When Yishuwen and Dendi returned to Bujo Sacred Mountain, the entire Bujo Sacred Mountain was also in a state of tension, especially since Yishuwen and Dendi had also gone to the path of creation. If something happened to them, it would undoubtedly be a disaster for the current human race. Although Yishuwen wasn't the only emperor of the human clan, he was the pillar of the human clan. Without Yishuwen, it wouldn't be as simple as one or two people pouncing on the human clan. The land of the 4 prefectures was such a big piece of cake. No one could hold back. According to the human race's smelting trial, it was already very good if they could defend one prefecture without Yishuwen, let alone expanding their territory to 4 prefectures. It was all because of Yishuwen's suppression. He used his strength to suppress everyone who disobeyed him. If he was gone, the consequences would be unimaginable. Fortunately, seeing that Yishuwen had returned safely, they finally breathed a sigh of relief. The human race would not fall because of Yishuwen's absence. After Yishuwen returned, he summoned the current Emperor Realm experts of the human race to his divine court. Although he was not here during this period, Bienxiaya took good care of this place. But because Yishuwen's foundation here was still shallow, it was naturally impossible to restore the grand scene in the myriad heavens and realms in the past. Thank the heavens, Patrol Envoy, you are finally back, Feng Yishur said in a slightly exaggerated manner, but there was 70% to 80% truth in this statement. During this period, there were all kinds of rumors. There were even rumors that Yishuwen had fallen on the path of creation. There were all kinds of such news, and it inevitably made the entire human race very worried. Yishuwen's role to the human race was not comparable to that of the other Emperor Realm experts combined. Now, they could finally rest assured. What are you talking about? Ha, don't worry, I am fine this time. On the contrary, I have gained a lot of benefits, and my cultivation has improved. Yishuwen also revealed some truth. Previously, he had fought against the sky-devouring demon clan's old ancestor, and he had used a lot of means and methods. If it was now, he could almost say that the sky-devouring demon clan's old ancestor would not even be able to resist a single move from him. His injuries would trigger, and he would die instantly. Although he was not a heavenly master, he was not far from it. That's good. The human emperor nodded and said, apart from this matter, there's also the matter about the neighboring big provinces wanting to attach themselves to the human race. What do you think, Patrol Envoy? Attach themselves to the human race? Could it be that their leader is dead? Yishuwen was very smart. He almost immediately guessed the purpose of these people and immediately understood what they wanted to do. A large sect without a sect master would be like a castle on the beach. A single wave would completely vanish into nothingness. If they didn't hurry up and find a thick thigh to cling to, when would they have to wait until then? Not to mention that without a leader, they might be attacked by the other big forces. Even the human race might try to expand their territory. Now that chaos was everywhere, a reshuffle was inevitable. The Fortune God dynasty would not stop such a situation and would instead wait and see. After all, no matter who gained benefits in the end, they would have to pay tribute to the Fortune God dynasty. Naturally, the Fortune God dynasty would be able to sit on the sidelines. Moreover, in this trip to the path of fortune, the one who had suffered the most was none other than the Fortune Divine dynasty. If one or two forces rebelled and sent out their troops, they could still interfere, but when this reshuffle spread to the entire Fortune Divine Dynasty, they were powerless even if they wanted to. In this chaos, the strong wanted to expand their territory, while the weak wanted to keep their original territory. A catastrophe caused by the path of creation finally broke out. Chapter 33:22. In this calamitous reshuffle, some forces would become stronger, while some forces would decline and disappear in the long river of history. It was like a wave in the long river of history. After a brief moment of brilliance, it would disappear forever. In such a calamity, it was imperative for many forces to attach themselves to the strong if they wanted to survive. In the 4 prefectures and the surrounding areas, was there anyone stronger than the human clan? Although the human clan had only risen for a short period of time, and it seemed that their foundation was not strong enough, as long as Yishuan was still around, no one dared to doubt the rise of the human clan. He was an extremely powerful person. He dared to kill his way into the heaven-devouring monster clan and killed their old ancestor. He almost uprooted the heaven-devouring monster clan. If the Eastern Heavenly Venerate Mansion had not stepped in to mediate, the consequences would be unimaginable. Even an extremely powerful person like the heaven-devouring monster emperor had to lower his head in front of him. He had no choice but to lower his head in exchange for Yishuan letting the heaven-devouring monster clan go. There had always been rumors that the heaven-devouring monster emperor had cultivated to the limit and was about to enter the heavenly venerate realm. Under such circumstances, the heaven-devouring monster emperor was unwilling to delay his breakthrough because of Yishuan. Otherwise, Yishuan would not be able to obtain any benefits. However, this kind of speculation was just a speculation. They didn't have any evidence to prove it. Moreover, Yishuan's strength had been recognized by everyone. The human clan, which had a 9th realm sovereign, was undoubtedly one of the strongest in the vicinity. The reason why it was considered one of the strongest was because there was still the heaven-devouring monster clan, which had started to keep a low profile. Without the heaven-devouring monster clan, the human clan would indeed be the strongest. Therefore, it was not strange that they wanted to cling to the human clan. On the contrary, it was a very correct choice. It's not impossible for them to attach themselves to the human clan. However, it's absolutely impossible for them to be independent like they were before. They must pay a sufficient price. The human clan will be stationed in their prefectures as a form of assistance. You can discuss these matters among yourselves. There's no need to look for me. Yishuan said. He wasn't some dynasty. If someone wanted to be his underling, it was impossible to not pay a price. Just shouting a few slogans could reap a lot of benefits. Did they think that he was an idiot? However, the arrival of these people also gave him a new idea. It was indeed time for the human race to further expand. Although the human race had not yet completely digested the territories of the 4 prefectures, it was only a matter of time. As the leader, he must plan for the long term and make further preparations. This upheaval, this catastrophe, he wanted to push the human race's power to the next level, to become one of the truly colossal powers in the Eastern domain. At that time, even without him, the human race would still be able to stand firmly in the Eastern region without having to worry about threats from others. Since the patrol envoy has agreed, I will go and greet them. They are lucky. If the human race didn't take them in, I'm afraid they would have been exterminated. Famishur said with a smile. In the past, when encountering such upheavals and catastrophes, the human race would often tremble in fear and wait for the catastrophe to pass. As for what benefits they could obtain from these upheavals and catastrophes, it was simply unimaginable. But now, with Yishuan, the human race had the confidence to take advantage of the crisis to expand their strength. As for those who refuse to obey, we will suppress them all. We don't have so much time to subdue them with gentle means. I have a hunch that this is just the beginning of the upheaval and catastrophe. I'm afraid that there will be even bigger upheavals in the future. Therefore, our time is limited. If they refuse to obey, we will kill them all. Yishuan sneered and said. The others also nodded. There's one more thing. Alchemy Sovereign wants to refine a type of pill recently. However, he is still lacking some heavenly treasures. Help me pass down the order to find the whereabouts of these heavenly treasures. Yishuan said. He had always been very concerned about the heaven-seizing pill that could temporarily increase his strength. However, there were some heavenly treasures that he couldn't find in the path of fortune. Even he couldn't do anything about it. Now that he had come out, he naturally had to search for them with all his might. Once he obtained the heaven-seizing pill, he would be more confident in dealing with the threat of the heaven-devouring Demon King. As for the divine fire Heavenly Lord, that was another matter. All right, no problem. Now that our human race is rich and overbearing, there shouldn't be a problem if we do our best to search for them. The human emperor said with a smile. In addition, prepare the army to be mobilized at any time and kill into the territory of the heaven-devouring Demon King. This upheaval and chaos is our opportunity to rise and swallow the heaven-devouring Demon King in one go. As Yishuan spoke, a hint of sharpness flashed in his eyes. Immediately, the others looked at Yishuan in astonishment. They were shocked by his bold words. That was because even when they were at their craziest, they had never thought of swallowing the territory of the heaven-devouring Demon King. That was simply impossible. That was because even though the human race had expanded over the years and seemed to have become very powerful, there was still a huge gap between them and the heaven-devouring Demon King. They were simply not on the same level. There was a huge gap between the strength of both sides. Moreover, the heaven-devouring Demon King was said to be about to enter the Heavenly Lord realm. At that time, the gap between both sides would be even greater. A force protected by a Heavenly Lord realm expert was unshakable. Even in such a great calamity and upheaval, they could still sit on the fishing platform. Who would dare to find trouble with them? Patrol Envoy, the heaven-devouring Demon King, is not that simple. There are still several Emperor Realm experts. Feng Yishe quickly reminded. Of course I know. However, as long as I kill the heaven-devouring Demon King, the remaining Emperor Realm experts of the heaven-devouring Demon King will not be a problem. Yishuan said. The battle between me and the heaven-devouring Demon King is almost inevitable. It all depends on when it will break out. If I can delay it long enough, I will find the heaven-devouring Demon King, even if he doesn't come looking for me. I will find him and kill him to prevent future troubles. Patrol Envoy, are you already prepared? Or have you entered the Heavenly Lord realm? Human Emperor asked quickly. Not yet, but soon. Give me some time, and I will enter the Heavenly Lord realm. At that time, I will be able to kill my way into the Fortune Divine capital and kill him. Yishuan said faintly. However, he was not boasting. If he had really entered the Heavenly Lord realm, no one would argue with him about this issue. Heavenly Lord realm experts would not be criticized. They were high and mighty. Once they entered the Heavenly Lord realm, their status would be different. No one would find trouble with him over a dead heaven-devouring Demon King. What he needed the most now was time. As long as he had enough time, the heaven-devouring Demon King would be dead. Yishuan, who had entered the Heavenly Lord realm, would be unprecedentedly terrifying. However, even if he had not entered the Heavenly Lord realm, it was not that he had no chance of winning. During this period of time, he had risked his life on the path of fortune. His methods and trump cards were also being formed one by one. It was not that he did not have the power to fight. However, the longer the battle dragged on, the more advantageous it would be for him. Ordinary people could not imagine how fast Yishuan's progress would be after he had enough law crystals and an incomplete king-level dragon vein. I understand. I will pass down the order to mobilize everyone, said the human emperor. His fists were trembling slightly due to excitement. How many years had it been since the human race had been so glorious? In his hands, the human race would usher in the most glorious era in history. Once the territory of the heaven-devouring demon tribe was taken over, the human race would become one of the top 10 great clans. They would not be any different from the super sections. Such a foundation was about to start now. At the same time, he was also very clear about what Yi Shiwen meant. If it really came to that, and the human clan did not take the initiative to devour the heaven-devouring monster clan's territory, there would likely be more than a few people waiting to attack them. Last time, when Yi Shiwen slaughtered his way into the heaven-devouring monster clan, something like this had already happened once. This time around, he would definitely not allow it to happen again. Otherwise, he would have to work so hard only to be taken advantage of by others. However, all of this was based on Yi Shiwen being able to defeat or even kill the heaven-devouring demon emperor. If he failed, the human race would be the one to suffer the consequences. Although he was worried, he could only support Yi Shiwen. He wanted Yi Shiwen to be able to kill the heaven-devouring demon emperor and bring the human race to the peak, becoming a colossus that could influence the entire creation realm. He did not want Yi Shiwen to be defeated in the end and ruin the future of the human race. However, there was no other way at this time because he had no other choice. He could only tie the human race to Yi Shiwen's chariot and enjoy the benefits brought by Yi Shiwen's rise. How could he not pay a sufficient price for this? All of this was normal. I will enter a closed-door training state for a period of time. Unless the heaven-devouring demon emperor attacks, don't disturb me, said Yi Shiwen. As for the other trivial matters, I will leave them to you. I will not care about them. I want to prepare for the battle against the heaven-devouring demon emperor with all my strength. He had no way out of this battle. The human race also had no way out. They could only fight with all their strength and defeat the heaven-devouring demon emperor. Only then would they have a future. Therefore, he would not be distracted by other matters. Alchemy Emperor, you must hurry up and refine the heaven-seizing pill. If you can refine it before the battle between me and the heaven-devouring demon emperor, it will be a great help. Yi Shiwen warned. Understood. Chapter 33:23. The human clan had no way out, and neither did Yi Shiwen. This was a battle that had to be won. There was no other way out, and there was no possibility of getting through by lowering one's head and bending one's waist. The only way out was to fight a bloody battle. After exhorting everyone, Yi Shiwen entered closed-door training. There was not much time left for him. He seemed to have smelled the aura of a great tribulation in front of him. Now it was just the beginning of the great tribulation. There would be more tragic situations in the future. Compared to now, it would be 100 times, 1,000 times more tragic, far worse. At that time, it would be a great tribulation of the world. Under such circumstances, those below the heavenly master realm would not dare to say that they could protect themselves. Even the emperor realm would be nothing. He had to cultivate to the heavenly master realm before that happened. Once he reached the heavenly master realm, it would be difficult for Divine Flame Heavenly Master to do anything to him, even if he had mysterious means. After all, there was a huge difference between crossing this level and not crossing that level. Although Yi Shiwen had entered the state of closed-door training, the disputes outside didn't stop. On the contrary, as time passed, all kinds of disputes and battles increased more and more. After the initial probing, they all began to attack on a large scale. Some great sects that no longer had a sect master overseeing them were the main targets of the attacks. Some saw that the situation wasn't good and retreated quickly. After giving up more than half of their territories, the pursuing forces didn't kill them. Instead, they let them live. Although they lost a lot of their territories, they still managed to preserve their most fundamental foundation, which was also the essence of their sect. However, the forces that did not give up their territories to save their lives encountered the most terrifying attacks at this time. Many forces attacked from all directions. Although they still had the means left by the Emperor Realm Lords, they were not the Emperor Realm Lords after all. They could not deal the most fatal blow to the invaders. In particular, after the Emperor Realm Lords behind those forces attacked regardless of their status, the Emperor Realm Lords' means were reduced to nothing. They could not use much power. After all, although the means left by the Emperor Realm Lords were powerful, they were not comparable to the orthodox Emperor Realm Lords. Soon, these great powers that had been glorious for a time were all destroyed in a single night. Their clansmen and disciples were all slaughtered, and their territories were divided up. Similar incidents of being divided and being divided were happening in the fortune world. Some of them happened in the Fortune Divine Dynasty, while others happened in the outer regions. Especially in the outer regions, there was no one to restrain them. Everyone acted according to their instinct of the strong preying on the weak. It was the same for the human race. After the initial probing, they confirmed that the human race was not weak, but rather strong. Therefore, they stopped looking for trouble with the human race and began to divide the surrounding territories. The human race also ruthlessly plundered and expanded outwards. The forces that stood in the way of the human race's iron hooves were all annihilated. Just the territory directly under the human race's direct jurisdiction had already reached the size of a province. Adding the territories of the vassal forces and the human race forces, the human race had expanded their territory by more than half in a short period of time, and their territory had also expanded by more than half. The Fortune Divine Dynasty, which should have come out to stop the human race's expansion, did not make any move. It was as if the Fortune Divine Dynasty had tacitly approved of the human race's actions and no longer interfered. This further stimulated the various forces that had been acting cautiously. They completely let go of their hands and feet to compete, going all out to conquer their opponents. Many forces that had been feuding with each other for many years attacked each other. Initially, due to the deterrence of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, they did not dare to make a move. But now that the Fortune Divine Dynasty was unable to fend for itself, they naturally attacked each other, wishing that they could kill each other. Feeling that they had the upper hand, they were even more unscrupulous when attacking. It was already like this in the Fortune Divine Dynasty, not to mention in the outer domain, where blood had already flowed like a river. Looking down from the sea, one could see pools of blood floating on the surface of the sea, tossed up and down along with the turbulent waves. Occasionally, one or two behemoths could be seen being tossed out of the sea, resembling a small hill being tossed out of the water. Then, these behemoths were quickly swallowed by the behemoths that leaped out of the water. Among the divine mountains, the bodies of giant beasts were being gnawed on. Their blood dyed the entire land red. More demonic beasts and more races were gradually born on this foundation. When the old era came to an end, new lives were born. Chaos was everywhere, and no one knew how long this chaos would last. They only knew that the worst order was better than the best chaos. Under such circumstances, seconds and minutes ticked by. In the blink of an eye, 100 years had passed. During this 100 years, the battles between various forces had reached a climax. As the human race expanded and fought for territories, it was inevitable that they would clash with other forces. For a time, the entire Buzhou Mountain was very busy. From time to time, the human emperor and Fengyi clan needed to take action to offset the attacks of the opposing emperor-emperors, buying enough time for the human race's cavalry. All of a sudden, on a clear, cloudless day, the sky was blue and boundless. A figure turned into a terrifying light that covered the entire Buzhou Mountain. At this time, within that light, a foot stretched out and stomped on Buzhou Mountain. This was a humiliation to the emperor-emperors of Buzhou Mountain. And today, the person on duty was none other than the human emperor. "How dare you? Who dares to trample on my Buzhou Mountain?" The human emperor shouted and struck out a peerless attack. At the same time, all kinds of array patterns emerged from the top of Buzhou Mountain. The Imperial Emperor-level array formations were activated one after another and struck out with terrifying attacks. However, the foot still didn't care and continued to stomp down. Whether it was the activated array formations or the attack launched by the human emperor, none of them could stop the foot, and it was crushed into pieces in midair. For a moment, the entire sky shook and the entire universe rumbled. The array patterns of the Imperial Emperor-level array formations were activated and burning like the bright sun. On the Buzhou Mountain, the Sui sovereign had left behind many defensive measures to protect the human race. It was the last refuge of the human race, and it was because of this that the light race didn't dare to do anything even though they had the upper hand. Later on, With the addition of layers of arrangements by Yi Shiwen, the Buzhou Mountain was like an iron bucket. Even if an ordinary imperial emperor appeared, he would die a horrible death. There was no way he could escape. However, the person who came was obviously not an ordinary person. In the end, he trampled down layer by layer. It was unknown how many matrix patterns and boundaries were broken. In the end, although he was finally stopped, the huge footprint was left in midair. It did not dissipate at all. It was as if it was the mark of the Great Path, directly staying in the air. Ren Huang's expression was incomparably solemn because he felt an unimaginable and terrifying power contained in that kick. It was not something that an ordinary person could resist. Go to the Divine Court and find the patrol envoy. He finally issued his order. His body turned into a stream of light and flew towards Buzhou Mountain. And in the shadow of the enchantment of Buzhou Mountain, a figure slowly emerged. This figure was wearing a black imperial robe and had an unimaginable appearance. It was unimaginably strong. "Who are you? Why are you invading the territory of the human race?" said the human emperor. "The territory of the human race? Ha ha ha. It won't be long before this place will belong to us and the human race will completely disappear." The figure laughed and said. This figure gradually appeared. This person's eyes were actually like two treasured wheels, with worlds revolving within them. It was as if they were real and could suppress everything. His aura was terrifying, and the sound of wind and thunder could be heard from his eyes. "You are the Baluan Saint Emperor." The human emperor immediately recognized this person. "The human race has no enmity with you. Why are you attacking us?" The Baluan Saint Emperor laughed and said, "No enmity? Don't you know? Being weak is a sin. Since the human race is going to die today, why don't you give this Buzhou Mountain to me?" The Sui sovereign really did have great skills and means. This Mount Buzhou has indeed blocked a crucial point. No wonder the human race has been thriving for so many years. Being weak is a sin. The human emperor clenched his fists and said, "Baluan Saint Emperor, although I am not your opponent, there is still a martial monarch in my race. Do you really think you can defeat him? Who is a martial monarch? I don't know him at all. I am here to take the Buzhou Sacred Mountain under the invitation of the heaven-devouring monster monarch. In the future, this place will be the foundation of my Baluan Saint sect. The human race will not be able to keep it. However, if you're smart, you can join my Baluan Saint sect. By then, no matter how big the world is, there will still be a place for you." This person was obviously an old monster who had been in seclusion for many years. He had just come out from seclusion and was thinking about how to establish a sect and pass down what he had learned to the next generation. With the help of countless disciples, he would be able to further his understanding of the Tao. This was also a common method used by many experts. When a sect was established, there would be many disciples who would cultivate their martial arts and skills. This would also help them verify if what they were cultivating was correct or not. Although there weren't many people, many a little makes an ocean. Eventually, a qualitative change would be achieved. Good, a place for you. But unfortunately, you will die today. Chapter 33:24. Good, what a good place. Unfortunately, you will die today. A cold voice came from the void. Then, another figure leaped out from Mount Buzhou. This figure was dressed in a cyan imperial robe and seemed to be confronting Saint King Baluan. The martial emperor. The treasured will holy emperor wasn't stupid. He hadn't seen Yi Shiwen before, and he hadn't even heard of his name. However, it wasn't difficult to guess the identity of this person with a monstrous and terrifying aura from the human emperor's words. He should be the martial emperor that the human emperor regarded as his biggest trump card. He had never heard of such a terrifying person when he was still cultivating. Although he had been in closed-door training for millions of years, this was very normal for an emperor. How could there be such a person who appeared out of nowhere and he did not know him? Could it be that his cultivation had broken through in these millions of years? Just thinking about it made him feel that it was impossible. He had spent millions of years cultivating from the 8th level to the 9th level, and the preparation time before this was even longer. How could someone cultivate from not having attained the Tao all the way to this level and only spend millions of years? It seems that the sky-devouring Monster King did not take action himself. Instead, he sent you to interfere with my cultivation, Yishuan said faintly. However, since you have come today, don't even think about leaving. Stay here. What? You want to keep me here? Ridiculous. The treasure wheel world in the treasure wheel Saint Emperor's eyes was about to collapse under his anger. Although he also admitted that the human in front of him seemed to be very strong, he had also stepped into the ninth realm. In his opinion, it was impossible to keep him here as long as he had not stepped into the heavenly master realm. However, before you die, I still want to ask you, has the sky-devouring Monster King stepped into the heavenly master realm? Yishuan could not help but ask. The celestial emperor sneered and said, You think you can kill me? Let me tell you, the heaven-devouring Monster King has indeed entered the celestial master realm. He will personally come to kill you soon. I don't know how you provoked him, but you're finished. No one has ever been able to escape after provoking a celestial master. Sure enough, he still stepped into the Empyrean realm first. Yishuan couldn't help but sigh slightly. Although he had already chased after it, he still lost the time. If he was given more time, he would definitely be able to step into the heavenly master realm. However, now that the sky-devouring monster monarch had broken through to the heavenly venerate realm, he definitely wouldn't give him time to break through to the heavenly venerate realm. In that case, this battle would be a little difficult. Even though he had made a lot of preparations for this, he still felt that it was a little tricky and troublesome. If he entered the celestial lord realm, there would be no such trouble at all, and he would definitely be able to kill the heaven-devouring demon emperor. A look of astonishment flashed in the eyes of the treasured wheel holy emperor, because he could see that Yishuan wasn't pretending. Although he sighed when he heard that the heaven-devouring demon king had entered the heavenly master realm, he didn't have the slightest trace of fear on his face. This couldn't be faked. Moreover, there was no need to pretend when one had cultivated to this level. What kind of ability did he have that he wasn't even afraid of the heaven-devouring monster monarch who had entered the heavenly master realm? Yishuan looked at the treasured wheel holy emperor, and the killing intent in his heart rose. He had already figured out everything. The heaven-devouring monster monarch should have already passed the heavenly tribulation and was now recuperating or consolidating his injuries. The treasured wheel holy emperor was summoned at this time to delay him, so that he wouldn't have the time to take care of the heaven-devouring monster monarch, who was recovering. The treasured will holy emperor was merely helping someone else. He was being used by the heaven-devouring monster monarch, but he didn't know what kind of matter he was involved in. However, even so, the killing intent in his heart didn't decrease. On the contrary, it continued to rise. Martial Emperor, I don't care where you come from. You've offended the heaven-devouring monster monarch, and you definitely won't be able to live. If I were you, I would quickly flee to the outer domain. Perhaps there might be some hope of survival. At this time, the treasured wheel holy emperor opened his mouth. He wasn't stupid. Obviously, he could tell that Yishuan wasn't easy to deal with. Therefore, he wanted to use the heaven-devouring monster monarch to scare him and force him away. This was the best strategy in the art of war. This strategy might be useful against others, but it was completely useless against Yishuan. He hadn't been afraid, even when his cultivation was far lower than now, let alone now that he had prepared so many methods. He had been preparing for this battle for far too long. Idiot, you don't even know that you've been used. Who do you think you are? You haven't investigated my background, and you dare to come to my Bujo, Sacred Mountain? Yishuan sneered. Since he hasn't come over, he must still be recuperating and has yet to completely consolidate his heavenly master realm. I'll go find him and kill him. Good. What an arrogant martial emperor. The treasured will holy emperor shouted loudly. Instantly, two incomparably huge treasure wheels splashed out from his eyes. They leaped out, bringing with them boundless laws and boundless divine power. They smashed down like stars directly towards Yishuan's eyebrows. This attack carried a terrifying aura, and it almost caused the entire world to stop functioning. It was indeed an extremely powerful method. The human sovereign had already retreated into the array boundaries of Buzhou Mountain in the distance. He had activated these array boundaries with all his strength in order to block the aftermath of this battle. He knew that this level of battle was no longer something he could participate in. For the time being, he still had to look up to a battle at this level of the ninth realm. During this period of time, his cultivation had progressed very quickly. In addition, Yi Shiwen had left behind many Emperor's personal letters, which had the effect of improving his own cultivation. There wasn't much time left before he broke through to the fifth realm. However, he could still only look up to a battle at this level. Yi Shiwen's eyes suddenly burst with a terrifying light. Although this weapon was terrifying, it was nothing in his eyes. His expression turned even colder as his entire body radiated with immortal light. Laws of the Tao of Emperors continued to surge out wantonly as his combat strength continued to rise. Many phenomenons fused into his back, and it seemed as though he was no longer fighting alone. Instead, it was as though there were 3,000 of them fused together. Bang! These two treasured wheels fluttered up and down. They were aiming for the space between Yi Shiwen's eyebrows. However, Yi Shiwen raised his hand slightly and patted these two treasured wheels. These two treasured wheels couldn't surpass him no matter how hard they struggled. Yi Shiwen's attack was easily blocked by him, and the divine radiance and the storm of laws also disappeared without a trace in an instant. Not even the slightest ripple could spread. All of them were smashed by Yi Shiwen's palm and disappeared without a trace. At this time, the treasure wheel Holy Emperor opened his mouth and whistled out a mouthful of sword energy. It was like the yellow river, exuding a dazzling light. It was the extreme burning of the laws, turning into an eternal brilliance that could destroy everything. This sword chi wasn't a Taoist tool. However, it was the sword chi left behind by a strong swordsman. He had continuously refined it over the years, and it had finally reached a shocking level. This sword chi whistled out and transformed into sword light that filled the sky. It seemed as if a super swordsman had come back to life and hacked down towards Yi Shiwen. Bang! This sword directly fell on Yi Shiwen's body and issued a shocking explosion. However, it didn't set off any ripples. It was just like the previous treasure wheel attack. Because they were in the human clan's territory, and it was the core territory, Yi Shiwen was extremely careful when he attacked. He absorbed all the aftermath of the battle. Yi Shiwen raised his hand and blocked this sword with his arm. Then he stretched out his hand and grabbed the sword energy that had formed a treasure sword in his hand. Bang! 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 A teeth-aching, cracking sound resounded, and everyone clearly saw that the sword chi in Yi Shiwen's hand was crushed inch by inch, and the sword chi turned into a rain of light that filled the sky and dissipated as if it had never appeared. The treasure wheel Holy Emperor suddenly felt a chill on his back. 2 consecutive attacks didn't work. This made him understand how terrifying the person in front of him was. He was simply not on the same level as him. He couldn't believe it. Both of them were in the 9th realm, but someone could be so tyrannical. It was simply an incredible miracle. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, he wouldn't have believed it. Perhaps the legendary 10 great emperors were at this level. He had been in closed-door training for too many years, so the standard of measurement was from many years ago. He didn't know that even 2 of the 10 great emperors, who were invincible in his eyes, had been killed by Yi Shiwen. I will fight with you today. In the next second, the treasure wheel Holy Emperor had already made a decision. His complexion turned pale, and he attacked. The laws on his body completely burned like a burning sun. Noisy, Yi Shiwen sneered. Then he suddenly grabbed with his big hand. The principles around the body of the precious Lun Holy Emperor were smashed into pieces the moment they came in contact with Yi Shiwen's big hand. They couldn't continue to burn. Therefore, the body of the precious Lun Holy Emperor was exposed. Clang! Clang! The 2 treasure wheels fluttered up and down and bombarded Yi Shiwen's big hand unceasingly. However, it seemed as if they had bombarded a hard stone. They didn't have any effect. They only splashed sparks and then disappeared without a trace. Boom! Finally, Yi Shiwen's big hand patted the chest of the treasure wheel Holy Emperor. The body of the treasure wheel Holy Emperor, which was as powerful as a sun, collapsed on the spot. His spirit was also completely annihilated by Yi Shiwen's next sword attack. An extremely powerful Ninth Realm Sovereign Monarch couldn't even withstand a few moves from Yi Shiwen at this moment. He was unprecedentedly powerful. Chapter 33:25. The current Yi Shiwen was unprecedentedly powerful. Unprecedentedly powerful. 100 years had made him even stronger. Previously, he had to use the Universe Creation Palm in order to kill a Ninth Realm expert. But now, he only needed a simple and easy move to break through all the defenses of the Treasured Wheel Saint Emperor and kill him effortlessly. In terms of strength, he had improved again. He hadn't spent the past 100 years in vain. After obtaining the Law Crystal, his cultivation had improved at a rapid pace. He had truly touched that level. It could be said that if he was given a little more time, he would be able to attract the heavenly tribulation, overcome it, and finally step into the legendary realm to become the ruler of the creation realm. Unfortunately, time waits for no man. He was not given enough time. Fortunately, he had guessed from the actions of the Treasured Wheel Saint Emperor that the heaven-devouring Monster King was not having an easy time. Otherwise, he would not have done such a thing. Although he was trying to buy time, it exposed his weak nature. If not, he would have come personally with his strength as a heavenly master. To the heaven-devouring Monster King, it was unfortunate news. But to him, it was great news. What a clown! Yi Shiwen's final evaluation was only these 4 words. After seeing that Yi Shiwen was fine, the human emperor heaved a sigh of relief. After all, Yi Shiwen was the pillar of the human clan. If anything were to happen to him, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, he was still shocked by Yi Shiwen's strength. He killed the Treasured Wheel Saint Emperor so casually. Such strength shocked him. It was simply unimaginable. Previously, Yi Shiwen had spent a lot of effort to kill the old ancestor of the heaven-devouring monster clan. But now, he had killed the Treasured Wheel Saint Emperor with a single move. During this period, Yi Shiwen's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Compared to before, it was simply incomparable. Although he did not know what level Yi Shiwen had reached, he could imagine that Yi Shiwen must have reached an unprecedented level. According to this progress, wouldn't the legendary Heavenly Master Realm be just around the corner? As he thought of this, he couldn't help but feel excited. If the human race could produce a Heavenly Venerate, then they would have the qualifications to stand on equal footing with the so-called top 10 races. The heaven-devouring monstrous clan had produced 2 level 9 monarchs in succession. Furthermore, one of them possessed the qualifications to attempt to break through to the legendary heavenly exalted realm. However, they were still one of the strongest clans beneath the 10 great clans. The reason for that was because they did not possess a powerful heavenly exalted. Whether or not a sect had an Empyrean presiding over it was the fundamental factor that determined whether or not a sect was qualified to be ranked in the top 10. Other than the various powerful tribes, the super sects and top-ranked sects also had Empyreans presiding over them. However, these Empyreans were similar to the East, South, West, and West Empyreans of the Fortune Divine Dynasty. They were in closed-door cultivation all year round. It was rare to see them even once or twice. On the other hand, if the human race had an Empyrean presiding over it, then their luck would skyrocket. The luck of a clan could be fed back to an individual, allowing the cultivation of the clansmen to advance by leaps and bounds. They would make breakthroughs one after another, and super powerhouses that could not have appeared before would appear. However, on the other hand, a super powerhouse could also drive the luck of a clan, allowing the clan to become stronger and stronger. The more powerhouses a clan produced, the stronger the luck of the clan would become. This complemented each other. In fact, if an Empyrean were to appear, it could even affect the progress of his cultivation, allowing him to cultivate to a higher realm faster. In short, It was extremely beneficial for the entire human race. However, he suddenly recalled that the biggest problem that Yi Shiwen faced now was that he still had to fight with the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor in order to advance to the heavenly venerate realm. Given the strength of the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, it would not be an exaggeration to say that he was at the heavenly venerate realm. On the other hand, Yi Shiwen, who had yet to advance to the heavenly venerate realm, Thinking of this, he could not help but worry. It was not only because of Yi Shiwen, but also because of the future of the human race. He was the human sovereign, a supreme being among the human race. The rise and fall of the human race was closely related to him. It was impossible for him to ignore it. However, he had no other choice now. He could only choose to believe in Yi Shiwen. He had no other choice. Human sovereign, bring some people with you to repair the damaged formation, said Yi Shiwen. Yi Shiwen said he had been very careful during the fight and had personally taken action to erase the aftermath of the battle. However, the barrier had been destroyed when the treasure wheel Holy Emperor had taken action earlier. Then, you'll mobilize the army of the human race. Regardless of whether it is to attack the territory of the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe or to prevent the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe from attacking, you must act as soon as possible. I'm going to kill the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. Everything will be decided now. Although Yi Shiwen was only a little bit away from the heavenly venerate realm, and the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor was probably injured, he did not think that he would have the time to advance to the heavenly venerate realm. The recovery of the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor would definitely be faster than his breakthrough. Therefore, he had no other choice but to kill the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor before that happened. Although this was not the best situation that he had envisioned, which was to advance to the heavenly venerate realm at the same time as the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, it was also not the worst situation. Generally speaking, it was still within his control. After such a long period of preparation, it was finally time to decide the outcome of the battle. Back then, both parties had their misgivings, so they had compromised and taken a step back. Yi Shiwen did not seek trouble with the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor at that time. Although the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor would not be able to advance to the heavenly venerate realm, he might not be a match for the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor either. Thus, it would not be beneficial for him to start the battle prematurely. The heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had also bought himself enough time by taking a step back. Now, both parties had become stronger. This battle would far surpass their original expectations. It would be an unprecedented battle. Yi Shiwen sneered. At this moment, no one would believe that he could defeat the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. Let's just wait and see then. After saying that, Yi Shiwen disappeared into thin air. At this moment, in the heaven-devouring monstrous clan, as Yi Shiwen had expected, the news of the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor reaching the heavenly venerate realm had spread throughout the entire heaven-devouring monstrous clan. For the heaven-devouring monstrous clan that had endured for so many years, this news was a great source of pride and satisfaction. Ever since Yi Shiwen slaughtered his way into the territory of the heaven-devouring monstrous clan and killed many heaven-devouring monstrous emperors, as well as the slumbering old ancestor of the heaven-devouring monstrous clan, the luck of the heaven-devouring monstrous clan seemed to have declined. From that moment onward, the morale of the human tribe grew stronger and stronger. However, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor grew weaker and weaker. They were unable to raise their heads before the human tribe. Even when facing the 10 major clans, they did not feel this way. However, when facing the human tribe, they had no choice but to lower their heads. The reason for this was very simple. They were unable to retaliate after being slapped in the face. The spiritual leader of their clan had been slapped to death. However, the actual leader of their clan, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, had no choice but to lower his head before Yi Shiwen and compensate him with a heaven-devouring blood pill. Everyone felt very sullen. However, at the same time, they also understood that the most important thing right now was to wait for the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor to come out of his closed-door training. When the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor came out of his closed-door training, he would most definitely become a supreme, heavenly exalted. At that time, it would truly be the time for them to hold their heads high. And now, their many years of cautiousness had finally paid off. The heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had finally stepped into the legendary heavenly exalted realm. The heaven-devouring monstrous clan possessed a sufficient foundation to begin with. They occupied 7 prefectures. Compared to the 10 major clans, they were only slightly inferior. Although there was a disparity between them, it was not an intrinsic disparity. The intrinsic disparity was the fact that the heaven-devouring monstrous clan did not have a powerful heavenly exalted overseeing it. That was the fundamental reason why the heaven-devouring monstrous clan had been unable to expand their territory all these years. And now, that problem had finally been completely resolved. It was time for the heaven-devouring monstrous clan to rise up and become the 11th strongest clan. At that time, it would truly be the time for them to hold their heads high. The first thing that they would do after holding their heads high would be to lead their army south and seize the 4 prefectures of the human race. They would slaughter all of the humans and turn them into food for their clansmen's cultivation. If it were in the past, they would definitely not dare to do such a thing. No matter how powerful the heaven-devouring monstrous clan might be, they would not dare to bare their fangs before the Fortune God dynasty. In fact, they would not even be qualified to utter a single word, much less go against the Fortune God dynasty's bottom line. One must know that when the human race had invaded the 4 prefectures, they did not resort to exterminating the human race. After all, that was too much of a taboo. Occupying another's territory was only for the sake of development. However, if they were to develop their territory to the point of exterminating the human race, it would cause the entire world to be dissatisfied. However, things were different now. They were already the 11th strongest clan with a heavenly exalted overseeing it. Even if they were to speak to the Fortune God dynasty, they would still have the confidence to do so. After all, they were all heavenly exalted level experts. They would not have a complete falling out with one another, just like the other powerful clans and superpowers. Even if this matter caused a huge uproar, it would not be a big deal. With the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor's strength, he would be able to flatten everything with a single hand. There was simply no need for him to be afraid of any side effects. This was a heavenly exalted. They had already risen to the status of chess players. Their strength was not something that others could imagine. Thus, ever since the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor came out from his closed-door seclusion, the entire heaven-devouring monstrous clan was in a state of jubilation. Lanterns and color banners were hung everywhere, celebrating their beautiful future. They were going to become the 11th strongest clan in the Fortune God dynasty. When they walked outside, they would all be a cut above others. However, they did not know that the true danger was already approaching them. Chapter 33:26. At that moment, the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe did not realize that a true crisis was approaching them. Or rather, to them, this was the most powerful moment in their history. How could there be a crisis approaching them? Just thinking about it made them feel that it was impossible. With a heaven-exalted level expert overseeing the eastern region, unless they provoked the eastern heavenly venerate, they would not encounter any trouble in the eastern region. As for provoking the eastern heavenly venerate residents, even if they were out of their minds, they would not do something like that. Thus, to them, this was the true beginning of their flourishing era. Furthermore, now was the time for the major powers to be reshuffled. How could the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe not increase their territory? Seizing the territory of the human race was only the beginning. Unfortunately, the human race also had the same thought. Once they devoured the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe, they would possess a foundation capable of contending against the 10 strongest races. As long as they persevered, it would only be a matter of time before the human race became the 11th strongest race. This battle was unavoidable for the 2 races who shared the same and opposite views. If the enmity between the two races was related to justice and evil at the beginning, it was now all for the survival and development of the two races. As long as there was a reason, it would be enough. At the same time, the heaven-devouring monstrous tribes' ancestral ground became unprecedentedly lively. As the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor's breakthrough to the heavenly venerate realm was not concealed, the news quickly spread to the surrounding races and the higher-ups of the factions. Originally, the news should have spread to the human race very quickly. However, the treasured wheel Saint Emperor had arrived first. Thus, the human race knew about it first. Furthermore, they had managed to deduce the true state of the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. However, the others did not know that even if they knew that the heaven-devouring demon monarch might not be in his peak condition, they would not have any ideas. Even a heavenly venerate like the Pantheon Emperor, who was extremely weak, could slaughter ordinary emperors as easily as slaughtering chickens and dogs. After obtaining this news, everyone knew that another super-powerful overlord would likely rise in the eastern region. In his hands, the heaven-devouring monstrous clan would reach an unprecedented level of prosperity. Therefore, they all came to pay their respects to this newly ascended heavenly venerate. Perhaps he wasn't the strongest amongst the heavenly venerates, and he was still a newly ascended heavenly venerate. However, this was already enough. In the past, they were still in the same realm, but now they were clearly a level apart. In an instant, the leaders of the major forces in the eastern region arrived. Apart from those tribes and forces that were too far away and felt that the heaven-devouring monstrous clan would not affect them or other powerful tribes and super sects, basically all of them came personally. These powerful forces and super sects were the strongest forces under the Fortune Divine Dynasty. Naturally, they weren't willing to share their territories with another person. Hence, they were still in the wait-and-see stage. It would take some time for Huang Xiaolong to gain their recognition. That said, even with that being the case, it could still be said to be a grand spectacle. In total, there were several tens of powerful monarchs that had personally come forth. Even when the heaven-devouring monstrous clan was at their peak, it was very rare to see such an astonishing spectacle. These monarchs were arranged to sit in the most central area. Together with the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, they toasted and exchanged toasts happily. They were all chatting cheerfully and wittily with one another. From time to time, they would raise their cups to the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, who was seated at the highest position, to show their respect. The heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, who was seated at the highest position, was seated on a cloud bed. His cloud bed's position was clearly much higher than the others. If the others wanted to see him, they could only look up at him, which also highlighted his position. It was as though he had leaped through the dragon's gate. From then on, he was no longer the same as before. He was also looking down at the crowd from above. These people that he usually addressed as fellow Taoists could only look up to him now. He also wore a rare smile on his face. Unlike the other heaven-devouring monstrous beasts, he only had a mouth. He had a handsome face and a slender body. Dressed in a golden imperial robe, it seemed as though the great Tao was brewing in his robe. His eyes were deep and unfathomable, as though there were universes being born and destroyed in them. He possessed an unparalleled dignity. May the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor live a long life. At this moment, many of the emperors stopped what they were doing and raised their wine glasses in unison. It was impossible for ordinary people to make these arrogant emperors lower their heads like this. However, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor was different. He had already entered the heavenly master realm and was different from them. Everyone, no need to be so polite, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor said in a slightly reserved manner. These emperors more or less raised their heads to look at the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. It was a realm that they dreamed of reaching. It was the legendary heavenly master realm, a supreme existence that truly dominated the creation realm. However, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor didn't care. He merely wore a reserved smile on his face. In the past, he might have had to worry about these emperors who were on the opposite side. However, to him now, everything was no longer important. This kind of transformation could only be understood by those who had truly entered the heaven-devouring, monstrous realm. It was the same as when he had advanced from the quasi-emperor realm to the emperor realm. In fact, this feeling was even more intense. At this moment, he truly understood why heavenly masters were the rulers. Although emperors were powerful, they couldn't compete with heavenly masters. Heavenly masters were existences that were on a different level of life and rules. Originally, even if 10 of him were added together, he wouldn't be stronger than the current him. This was an intrinsic transformation. If it wasn't for the better development of the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe, he wouldn't even bother to say a few words to these emperors. Would humans have the desire to communicate with ants? Furthermore, this transformation would become more obvious as time passed. Many of the emperors could also tell that he was looking down on them. Although they were displeased, there was nothing they could do. After all, they knew very well how terrifying a person who had truly taken that step would be. No matter how displeased they were, what else could they do? Suddenly, the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor opened his eyes. His eyes shone with a sharp light as he said, "Since you're here, why don't you come out and meet me? Let me see who my friends are." His words immediately caused a commotion among the many emperors. According to what the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had said, someone was actually able to sneak up on them without them noticing at all. Dozens of emperors didn't notice anything at all. How terrifying was this? It wouldn't be a big deal if someone managed to hide from the senses of any one of them. However, if someone managed to hide from the senses of dozens of them at once, then it would be completely incredible. Many people spread their divine senses as if they were trying to find that person. However, they didn't have to search for long. A figure wearing a green imperial robe had already appeared before them. Who else could it be but Yi Shiwen? Martial Emperor Yi Shiwen. Many emperors recognized him immediately. Previously, Yi Shiwen could be said to be in the limelight. Even the old ancestor of the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe had been killed by him. Furthermore, although the news of Yi Shiwen killing 10 great emperors on the path of creation hadn't spread to everyone yet, just his accomplishments were enough to make them pay attention to him. After all, it wasn't difficult to remember the name of such a powerhouse who was in the limelight. In the next instant, the crowd already understood why Yi Shiwen had come. It wasn't that they didn't know the origin of the grudges between the human tribe and the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe. The heaven-devouring monstrous tribe wanted to cut off the roots of the human tribe. However, the human tribe was even more ruthless. They killed the old ancestor of the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe and forced the current heaven-devouring monstrous emperor to lower his head in exchange for a chance to catch his breath. That was how he managed to achieve his current glory as a heavenly venerate. Not to mention the constant friction between the two sides over the years. It could be said that the grudges between the two sides were endless. At the same time, the crowd also knew very well that once the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor completely stabilized his heavenly venerate cultivation, he would definitely head to the human tribe to raze them to the ground and kill Yi Shiwen. However, what the crowd didn't expect was that the first person to make things difficult for him wasn't the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. Instead, it was Yi Shiwen, who was viewed as a weakling. Perhaps he was indeed very strong and was able to kill the great ancestor of the demon race. However, in the eyes of many people, this was nothing. Compared to the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor who had truly stepped into the heavenly venerate realm, Yi Shiwen was insignificant. Therefore, Yi Shiwen definitely had no chance of winning. There was no need to even think about it. However, the fact that he had dared to come in person was enough to make many people admire him. If it had been them, they would probably have fled thousands of miles away or even directly hid in the outer domain. As the saying went, where there's life, there's hope. Yi Shiwen floated in midair and stared fixedly at the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor who was sitting high on the bed of clouds. This was the person who had caused him to be on tenterhooks for many years. He couldn't have a moment of peace and was always thinking about how to improve his strength so that he could fight against the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor. How to enter the heavenly venerate realm faster than the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had become his obsession. However, now that he knew that the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had entered the heavenly venerate realm one step ahead of the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor, he breathed a sigh of relief. This meant that he didn't need to catch up anymore. He didn't need to be in a hurry anymore. All he needed to do was to fight with all his might. If he won this battle, he would be able to enter the heavenly venerate realm. However, if he lost, there would be no need to mention anything else. The heaven-devouring demon king was also looking at Yi Shiwen. Even though they were enemies, he still had to say that Yi Shiwen was a peerless character. Yi Shiwen was merely standing here, yet he had the aura of a person who could suppress the entire audience. He was confident that he would be able to do the same if he were in Yi Shiwen's shoes. However, he was a heavenly venerate while the other party was merely an emperor. It was simply an incredible miracle that the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor was able to do this. He was indeed a peerless figure. It was no wonder that he could lead the human race to this stage and force the heaven-devouring monstrous tribe to this stage. However, everything would be for naught today. Chapter 33:27. However, everything would be for naught today, because he would die by his own hands. The heaven-devouring demon emperor was very sure of this. Since he had stepped into the Empyrean realm, everything was already very obvious. The human race and the heaven-devouring monstrous clan are mortal enemies, and will fight to the death. You and I were also mortal enemies in the past. Thus, you can only die. The heaven-devouring demon emperor said coldly. Yi Shiwen only responded with 2 words, but these 2 words contained his own strong self-confidence. Arrogant. Before the heaven-devouring monster king could open his mouth, one of the rulers of the heaven-devouring monster tribe couldn't help but speak up. The heaven-devouring monster king was the strongest among them, and also their hope. Now that he was being looked down upon by Yi Shiwen, he was extremely displeased. In his opinion, Yi Shiwen was just a dead man. Yet, he still dared to clamor before his death. Although the other emperor lords didn't speak, their thoughts were similar. This Yi Shiwen was really courageous. He actually still had the mood to speak like this at this time. Yi Shiwen just glanced at him and said, "Today, I am mainly here to kill him. As for the irrelevant people, quickly get lost." He pointed a finger at the heaven-devouring demon emperor. As for the other emperors, he had completely ignored them. With his current strength, he was qualified to do so. However, when that heaven-devouring monstrous clan's emperor monarch heard those words, it was simply a form of humiliation. He had completely disregarded what it meant to be an outsider. What sort of status did he possess in the heaven-devouring monstrous clan? Since when had he been reduced to a nobody? I think you're courting death. The heaven-devouring monstrous clan's emperor monarch was infuriated and immediately attacked. If it was before, he would definitely not dare to attack Yi Shiwen. However, with the heaven-devouring monstrous emperor present, what did he have to be afraid of? Sure enough, at the instant that the heaven-devouring monstrous clan's emperor monarch attacked Yi Shiwen felt an enormous oppressive might crushing down on him. That emperor monarch was trying to completely suppress him and prevent him from attacking. This pressure was extremely terrifying, and it directly crushed down on one's soul. This was a suppression of a completely different level of life. If Yi Shiwen had been an ordinary 9th realm expert, then he would have been suppressed miserably. However, he wasn't an ordinary 9th realm expert. With a slight movement of Yi Shiwen's body, the invisible pressure was completely broken and dissipated into nothingness. Apart from Yi Shiwen and the heaven-devouring demon king, no one else knew that the 2 of them had actually exchanged blows in secret. At this moment, the heaven-devouring monstrous clan's emperor realm expert had already arrived before Yi Shiwen. He had a sinister smile on his face. It was as though he could already see Yi Shiwen's fate after being struck by him. He knew that Yi Shiwen would definitely end up in an incomparably miserable state. However, Yi Shiwen suddenly moved. A smile appeared on his face, and he instantly pulled out his hand. Although he had attacked later, his attack arrived first. Before that heaven-devouring monstrous clan's Emperor Monarch's attack could land on Yi Shiwen, it was all smashed into smithereens by Yi Shiwen's hand. Then, Yi Shiwen's hand smashed into that Emperor Monarch's body. Bang! The Emperor Monarch only had time to let out a miserable shriek. Then, before everyone's eyes, his entire body started to crumble. Inch by inch, his body crumbled in front of everyone. The Yuan spirit hidden within his body was also severely injured. Under this huge pressure, it started to burn up. Stop! At this moment, the heaven-devouring demon king shouted and attacked almost instantly. He couldn't just watch as Yi Shiwen killed one of their emperor monarchs right in front of him. That wouldn't just be humiliating him. More importantly, no matter how strong Emperor Monarch was, it could only be born after accumulating a lot of luck. There weren't many experts of this level in the heaven-devouring monstrous clan. Now, they could be counted with 2 hands. The death of any one of them would be a huge loss. Yi Shiwen instantly sensed that the surrounding nomological laws had suddenly changed. His Yuan spirit, which was originally burning up, suddenly stopped burning. This was the power of a heavenly lord. They could reverse the nomological laws. Although the heaven-devouring demon king's skills and comprehension were limited, he had already far surpassed an ordinary emperor monarch. Oomph! Yi Shiwen snorted coldly. He didn't take the threat of the heaven-devouring demon king to heart at all. He slammed his hand down and instantly smashed the Yuan spirit of the heaven-devouring demon king into nothingness. Although he couldn't kill the emperor monarch in one blow, it was enough. He killed an emperor monarch of the heaven-devouring demon king right in front of the heaven-devouring demon king. This was like a huge slap to his face. Sure enough, everyone was shocked and looked at the heaven-devouring demon king at the same time. This was a slap to his face right in front of him. Yi Shiwen didn't take him hard at all. The heaven-devouring demon king's face turned pale, and he was extremely angry. It was fine if he didn't attack. However, he still couldn't do anything to Yi Shiwen after he attacked. This was more than just a great humiliation. Good. What human martial emperor? The heaven-devouring demon king's expression changed. If it wasn't for the fact that Yi Shiwen was from the same clan, he wouldn't be moved even if 10 or 100 emperor monarchs died. However, it was his own clan member who was killed right in front of his eyes. Today, I'll make you beg for death. The heaven-devouring demon king was also extremely angry. That was why he said such words. Then come and give it a try. The heaven-devouring demon king was so angry, but Yi Shiwen didn't take it to heart at all. His response was also very calm. Today's battle was a fight to the death. It was unavoidable. It was meaningless to be angrier than the other. Yi Shiwen understood this. However, the heaven-devouring demon king didn't. This was because the heaven-devouring demon king had never taken him seriously. Especially after he became a heavenly master, he wouldn't take him seriously. Humph, do you have the guts to fight with me in the starry sky? The heaven-devouring demon king looked at Yi Shiwen and said, in the end, he didn't want to turn this place into a battlefield. The price to pay was too painful. Even if he was confident that he could end the battle in a short time, the ancestral land of the heaven-devouring demon king would also be destroyed in the process. He didn't underestimate the destructive power of an emperor monarch, especially the destructive power of a 9th realm emperor monarch. He hadn't been a heavenly master for long and hadn't set up a heavenly master level formation yet. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to worry at all. Are you trying to provoke me? It doesn't matter. Yi Shiwen smiled. He knew what the heaven-devouring demon king was thinking. However, he didn't know that Yi Shiwen also wanted to take over the entire territory of the heaven-devouring demon king. At this moment, he didn't want to completely raze this place to the ground. When the time came, he would have to start all over again. When the heaven-devouring demon king saw that Yi Shiwen had agreed, he immediately leaped into the starry sky. He would be able to show his strength in the battle in the starry sky. It didn't matter. It didn't matter how many stars were destroyed. There were many stars that didn't have any living creatures on them. There wouldn't be any karma, even if they were destroyed to the extreme. Yi Shiwen followed closely and flew up directly. He stood in the void and faced the heaven-devouring demon king from a distance. He didn't seem to be at a disadvantage. Human Martial Emperor, you're pretty strong and talented. However, it's a pity that you're going to fall here. Initially, I was worried that you would lead the human race to defect. I didn't expect you to be so stupid. Do you think that I'm the same as the old ancestor of my race? Even if I'm the old ancestor of my race, if he wasn't seriously injured, you wouldn't have a chance to be so arrogant. As the heaven-devouring demon king spoke, the killing intent on his face became more and more intense. He had already recalled those heaven-devouring demon king emperors that Yi Shiwen had killed previously, including the old ancestor of the heaven-devouring demon king. To their race, it was a great humiliation. In the end, Yi Shiwen even took advantage of the time when the heaven-devouring demon king was making a breakthrough to force him to sign an agreement under the city. He was forced to give up a heaven-devouring blood pill. Only then did the matter settle down. Although he was forced to do so at that time, thinking about it now, he was full of humiliation. If he wasn't seriously injured? Yi Shiwen chuckled. There's no fairness in this world. If I had cultivated for the same amount of years as you, people like you would just be a clown. I could destroy you with a flip of my hand. How dare you be so arrogant in front of me? The heaven-devouring demon king's eyes emitted bursts of light. It seemed as if killing intent was brewing and evolving in his eyes. In the distance, figures emerged one after another. They were none other than the emperors who had come to celebrate the heaven-devouring demon king's breakthrough to the heavenly lord realm. They didn't want to miss this battle. Even if there was a huge disparity between the two sides, one side was still a heavenly lord, and the weakest side was also a top-notch figure in the ninth realm. A battle of this level was not something that could be seen even with money. At this time, when they heard Yi Shiwen's words, they couldn't help but gasp. This Yi Shiwen was simply too arrogant. He dared to challenge the heaven-devouring demon king. However, there were also people who were aware of the time and experience that Yi Shiwen had gone through. After thinking about it carefully, they felt that what Yi Shiwen said might not be unreasonable. Although stepping into the heavenly venerable realm had nothing to do with time, like the Battle Emperor, who had been an emperor monarch since the founding of the Fortune Divine Dynasty, and held a high position and authority, even after so many heavenly venerables and emperor monarchs had died, he was still an emperor monarch and was surpassed by many juniors. However, based on the ferocity that Yi Shiwen had displayed, it wasn't impossible for him to enter the heavenly lord realm in the end if he had that much time. Now that he thought about it, it was really true that the heavens were jealous of geniuses. What he lacked the most was probably time, but there was nothing he could do about it. To them, the fewer heavenly venerables there were, the better. Having one more heavenly venerables was equivalent to having one more emperor emeritus. If it was them, they would naturally have nothing to say. However, it just so happened that the emperor emeritus was someone else. Fortunately, those heavenly lords didn't often appear. Otherwise, these emperors would die of grievance. Well said. There's no such thing as fairness. Therefore, you won't have the chance to enter the heavenly lord realm. Today will be the day you die. The heaven-devouring demon king's terrifying aura was immediately released, covering the sky. Chapter 33:28. Many of the cultivators who were searching for various heavenly materials and earthly treasures in the starry sky were now trembling. In the face of this apocalyptic aura, they did not dare to move at all. For ordinary cultivators like them, they were only god-level cultivators. Although they were powerful enough in front of mortals, they were no different from ants in front of a heavenly venerate. To a heavenly venerate, this was nothing more than a slightly larger ant. There was no difference at all. They were shivering in fear. They felt the pressure from the depths of their souls. It was as if they were facing the heavens. They were indeed like ants in front of the heavenly might. Heaven and earth were trembling. They could feel the fury of a supreme venerate. For a moment, they weren't the only ones. The entire Eastern Territory was alarmed. The Eastern Territory was huge, but it wasn't huge for the top powerhouses. not to mention the fury of a powerful heavenly venerate. His fury was enough to burn the entire Eastern Territory. It was shocking. A tyrannical divine sense swept out and looked at the two people in the sky. At the same time, they also wanted to know who could completely anger a dignified celestial master. Given the strength and status of a celestial master, they could do anything they wanted and kill anyone they wanted to kill. There was simply nothing that could trouble them. Because of this, it was difficult to say what such a powerhouse could do that was worthy of their anger. Soon, they saw the person in the sky. It was Yi Shiwen, who had been in the limelight recently. Why is it him? Oh, no wonder it's him. The seemingly contradictory words revealed what many powerhouses were thinking. The first sentence was, why is it Yi Shiwen? One should know that Yi Shiwen was very famous recently. Although Yi Shiwen's glorious achievements in the path of creation had yet to spread, there were still people who knew about it. He was able to kill the 10 great emperors and 10 great emperors. His astonishing combat power was enough to put him at the peak of the emperors. They didn't know that Yi Shiwen's strength had made several breakthroughs later on. However, the things they knew were enough to put them among the strongest powerhouses below the heavenly venerate. As for the latter sentence, everyone recalled the grudge between the human clan and the heaven-devouring monstrous clan. Or perhaps it should be said that the grudge between Yi Shiwen and the heaven-devouring monstrous clan was no secret. Yi Shiwen had forced the heaven-devouring monstrous clan to lower their heads. The heaven-devouring monstrous emperor had to hand over the heaven-devouring blood pellet. In the end, the heaven-devouring monstrous clan had to sign the Underground Alliance. This had caused the heaven-devouring monstrous clan to lose a lot of face. Now that the heaven-devouring demon king had finally stepped into the heavenly master realm, there was no reason not to settle the score with him. However, he didn't know how Yi Shiwen had provoked the heaven-devouring demon king into such a rage. It's still not certain who will die today. Yi Shiwen just smiled faintly. He wasn't angry at the words of the heaven-devouring demon king. Stubborn. The heaven-devouring demon monarch laughed coldly before he let out a roar. In an instant, 81 beams of cold light shot out from his body and pierced into the star domain, forming a terrifying battle formation. This terrifying battle formation unleashed a truly terrifying attack that covered the sky and earth, covering the entire Milky Way in the universe. The heaven-devouring demon king didn't need to use his original strength at all. He only needed to use a simple technique to unleash an astonishing combat power that was enough to annihilate many emperors. This was the strength of a heavenly venerate. Although he hadn't completely consolidated his realm, he had indeed stepped into the realm that everyone was envious of. The heaven-devouring demon king's strength was fully displayed by being able to form a monstrous battle formation casually. You're too naive to think that you can kill me with such a technique. Yi Shiwen let out a long and loud roar. His hands glowed with golden light, and he suddenly tore the void. Suddenly, these overwhelming attacks were torn apart under the cover of this golden light and turned into nothingness. Then, Yi Shiwen suddenly stepped on the ground. It was as if a deity was trampling on the mortal world. The entire universe's starry sky was shaking, forming a terrifying shockwave. It swept out in all directions like a stormy sea. It wasn't something that ordinary people could resist. The 81 beams of cold light were turned to ashes in the starry sky. The array formation formed by the cold light was reduced to nothingness in an instant. Many sovereign emperors and experts sucked in a breath of cold air. The first exchange between the two sides had already shocked them. The heaven-devouring demon king had just casually waved his hand, and he had already set up a formation that could kill a powerful emperor lord. Yi Shiwen was also extremely terrifying. He had actually broken such a terrifying formation so easily. It was obvious that he had not been affected at all. Such strength had probably exceeded the limits of an emperor. The heaven-devouring demon king also looked at Yi Shiwen with some surprise. Although he had just casually set up a battle formation, it was already not something that ordinary people could deal with. Even top experts in the Ninth Realm would not be able to break his battle formation easily. It was simply incredible that Yi Shiwen had done it so casually. He was indeed strong enough among the emperors, but that was all he could do. After all, an emperor was just an emperor. The heaven-devouring demon king's expression turned serious. He could already sense that many experts were watching. He wanted to thoroughly establish his might in this battle and let these people know how strong he was. 3 moves? I'll kill you within 3 moves. The heaven-devouring demon king shouted. Suddenly, a gold-plated phoenix feather pendant appeared in his hand. Almost instantly, it slashed down towards Yi Shiwen. Heaven and earth were emitting waves of tremors. The laws turned into phoenix patterns and spread out. In an instant, it seemed as if a huge phoenix had really been formed and was about to grab Yi Shiwen. This was an extremely terrifying attack. The heaven-devouring demon king had already decided to kill Yi Shiwen within 3 moves in order to establish his supreme prestige. This attack was too fast, and the speed was too terrifying. Buzz! Yi Shiwen immediately felt that the space around him was trembling. This was a true expert. It was completely different from the incomplete Pantheon Tianzuan or the clone of the Primal Chaos Emperor that Yi Shiwen had seen before. The true heavenly venerate was right in front of him. However, he did not panic. Instead, a martial emperor seal appeared in his hand and rotated. Then, it turned into an ancient sacred mountain on the spot and smashed down towards the huge phoenix. Clang! There was a huge roar. Everyone only saw a terrifying light from the collision between the 2 sides. In that instant, a divine light erupted. It was as hot as the sun and almost burned everything. Everyone felt that their divine thoughts, which had been extended into it, were annihilated in an instant. They could no longer see anything. At this moment, they could only shout and open their heavenly eyes. Only then did they see a figure flying out like a meteor. That person was none other than Yi Shiwen. Many people exclaimed at once. It was not because Yi Shiwen had been blasted away like a meteor. In everyone's opinion, this was a very normal thing. It would be strange if it was the other way around. However, what really shocked them was that Yi Shiwen did not show any signs of abnormality after suffering such an attack from the heaven-devouring demon monarch. He did not vomit blood, and there were no injuries on his body. It was as if he had just been blasted away. That was all. It was incredible to see. The heaven-devouring demon monarch had said that he would kill Yi Shiwen within 3 moves. He was definitely not joking. Many emperor lords in the Ninth Realm felt that if they were in his place, they would be seriously injured, even if they were lucky enough not to die. However, Yi Shiwen seemed to be fine and did not take it to heart at all. How shocking was that? There are still 2 moves left. I'll wait for you to destroy me. Yi Shiwen laughed loudly. His loud voice spread throughout the universe. Just as he had expected, he was at a complete disadvantage in the exchange with the heaven-devouring demon monarch just now. The power of a heavenly venerate had indeed broken through the limits of an emperor lord and reached an unbelievable level. However, just as he had expected, the heaven-devouring demon monarch, who had just broken through, had not completely grasped the power of a heavenly venerate, which was the power to change the rules. He was still used to using the power of an emperor lord. Although he was stronger than the heaven-devouring demon monarch, he had not completely crushed him, and this was his chance. He would also use the battle with the heaven-devouring demon monarch to verify what he had learned. Other emperor lords would probably not even dare to think of doing such a bold thing. Only Yi Shiwen would dare to think of it. Don't be arrogant. As soon as Yi Shiwen's voice fell, the figure of the heaven-devouring demon monarch had already broken through and appeared in front of him. That terrifying power raged in an instant, forming a frenzy that tore the entire universe apart. Yi Shiwen's attack had not killed or even seriously injured Yi Shiwen. On the contrary, he was unscathed. This was a great humiliation to the heaven-devouring demon monarch. How could he let it go? Immediately, another terrifying attack came crashing down. This attack directly broke through Yi Shiwen's time domain and blasted on his body. Yi Shiwen used the time robe to protect himself at the most critical moment. However, this attack still smashed into the sky, causing sparks to fill the sky. It almost caused the world to shake violently. Yi Shiwen retreated again and again. Only then did he barely manage to offset the power of this attack. However, before he could offset this huge force, the heaven-devouring demon monarch's final attack finally came. He wanted to take down Yi Shiwen within 3 moves. Now that he had boasted, he was finally furious to the extreme after 2 moves failed to do anything to Yi Shiwen. The gold-plated phoenix, wing dang in his hand, completely unfolded and erupted with the final movement. He no longer held back. He had to completely obliterate Yi Shiwen to maintain his prestige. I'll let you attack twice. This time it's my turn. At the same time, Yi Shiwen finally stopped holding back and attacked. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.